Excellent. Okay, well, good evening, everyone. I'm Mayor Val Vandenbroek, and I'd like to call the November 1st, 2021 regular council meeting to order and begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional unceded territory of the Katzie, Kwantlen, Maspee, and Semiahmoo First Nations. And just for any members of the public who are in attendance to watch these proceedings, welcome. And just a reminder to keep your mics and your cameras turned off while you are in attendance. And before I introduce everyone else, I just want to remind everybody that Remembrance Day is coming up. And although we will not be having any in-person ceremonies in LangleyCity, I see the banners are up and looking beautiful as a reminder. And I encourage everybody to take time during that day to remember the sacrifices that were made for us for our freedoms that we have today. So with me this afternoon, I have Councillor Paul Albrecht, Councillor Terry James, Councillor Gail Martin, Councillor Nathan Bahal, Councillor Ruby Stortaboom, and Councillor Rosemary Wallace. And for staff, we have our Chief Administrative Officer, Francis Chung, Darren Light, our Director of Corporate Services, Carl Johansson, our Director of Development Services, Rick Baumhoff, our Director of Engineering, Parks and Environment, Kim Hilton, our Director of Recreation, Culture and Community Services, Kelly Kenny, our Corporate Officer. So we're going to start off with the adoption of the November 1st, 2021 regular agenda. Before we consider the adoption of the agenda, are there any changes or additions to the agenda? Councillor Bahal, go ahead.
I guess my motion can be added to new business.
Okay, and that was circulated beforehand.
Yes.
So we are going to add that under new business. Sorry, I got to flip through my pages. That'll come after the motions, I believe, before we go a motion to hold a closed meeting, if that's all right with you. Okay, Councillor Martin.
Yes, thank you. Just after the library report, a quick update from Metro Vancouver.
Okay. Does anybody have an issue with that? Okay, seeing none, let me just add that into my notes. Okay, motion that the November 1st, 2020 agenda be adopted as circulated with the additions. Councillor Bahal, Councillor Albrecht, anybody contrary? And that carries. All right, regular meeting minutes from October 18th, 2021, that the minutes of the regular meeting held on October 18th, 2021 be adopted as circulated. Need a mover and a seconder, James and Stortaboom. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Special pre-closed meeting minutes from October 13th and October 18th, 2021, that the minutes of the special pre-closed meeting held on October 13th and October 18th, 2021 be adopted as circulated. Mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Stortaboom, Councillor Albrecht. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. And finally, the public hearing minutes from October 18th, 2021, that the minutes of the public hearing held on October 18th, 2021 be adopted as circulated. Need a mover and a seconder, please. Stortaboom and Bahal. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. All right, we have 3 delegations up this evening for 5 minutes each. So Mr. Walter Stunder, or Copper Antiviral Film. So welcome, Mr. Stunder. You have 5 minutes to present. Thank you.
Thank you. Needless to say, this is all about copper. I learned about copper when I was actually very young. My mother used to bathe me in a copper tub so I wouldn't get sick. And here I am, 84 years old, and I haven't been sick much since. So obviously copper works. Now, my wife was actually in care when COVID came around. And so, of course, needless to say that I wanted to find out something about is there any cure for COVID? And of course, I knew that copper does kill COVID, kill germs. I started at the Centera Lee Hospital. I checked with other hospitals, and they said, yes, put copper sheets in your wife's room. So needless to say that I did. Now, if you could open up the little portfolio there, the 8.5 by 11, and we'll start going through that. Needless to say, we have to go pretty quick. There's a test report. I mean, putting 85 years into 5 minutes is pretty tough, but nevertheless, there's a test on the copper that it does kill germs, COVID, and the next one says if copper kills coronavirus, why isn't copper everywhere? Needless to say, I have the sheets there that give an indication of which copper or what copper kills. And how does it kill like that? Well, basically, there's your next two sheets there, the one with the funny little, the orange one. Basically, that's what a virus looks like. It's not the nice little ones you see on TV. And next page over is a copper. You'll notice that on the outside layer, there's the copper, there's that one electron, and that travels at the speed of light roughly, and it does kill the virus. Now, where does the virus need to be killed? Well, if you look at the introductory offer at the back there, there's a bus pole there. So TransLink did some work on the bus poles, and they found out that copper does kill up to 99% of the bacteria on there. Now, the next page is me killing copper, killing COVID already. I worked out a deal with a company in Korea that does make copper film, and it's available to start working now. I've had several buses fixed up already with that. And the other ones are the Korean ones, but these have been on the buses in Korea for approximately 2 years now. So they're working well there. And then if you go into the next 2 pages there, it says 28 schools reported COVID outbreaks. And the next, right on in today's paper, COVID-19 outbreaks are again 28. And then there's the 2 sheets there, one with the computer on it and the other one with all the desks on there. Now, if you open up the canister right beside you and pull out the things in there, and so you'll see that there's one big sheet there, and that is what kills the COVID, kills all the germs, and it's put on the desks of all the schools and offices, in Korea. They have had a very good shall we say, good success, because their rate is about the same as British Columbia's. They have 50 million people. We have 2 million. We have 5 million. And the other ones, ones are just basically satchels, envelopes, and therefore to put stuff in there. And when you put something in there, it kills all the COVID on there. Then, of course, you have a pair of gloves there. Now, when you wear those gloves, these are not really working gloves, but they are meant there to kill all your COVID on your hands. And they work within about 10 or 15 minutes. And then you'll notice there should be 2 pens in there. These are the much sought after COVID killing ballpoint pens. So you could keep those and you could keep the gloves. Now there's new things instead as well. Now I could show you the cup. I use this for drinking coffee, and I use this one for drinking water. Not only does it kill the germs on the outside, it kills the germs on the inside. And not to be outdone, the Koreans came up with a high-tech dog dish. This kills all the germs for the dog, and you'll notice that the dogs generally eat too fast. So they put these baffles in here so the dog doesn't eat too fast. It's good for the stomach of the dog, and it kills COVID as well. And then, of course, they're gone into other products like this. Like this is for your cell phone. And okay, the freebies are these little dealies on here. Okay, you have a lot of dirty buttons downtown here. You know, I don't think they've been cleaned for a whole year or so, I would imagine. And so all you have to do is just clean the button off, throw one of these COVID killing buttons, germ killing buttons, and they stay on there. I tried it. I'm not going to tell you where, but they do work on your street crossings. And also, I will give you some, shall we say, do a little bit of work at City Hall, coat much used rails and posts, door handles, stuff like that. Any questions, you could contact me on my email.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Stunder. I know we've been talking over the last several months, so I appreciate what you're doing, and I know TransLink has been looking into it as well. They did the research on the buses here, and they've proven that it has been working, and they are going to continue on with it. So yeah, thank you for the presentation. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Stunder at this point? Seeing Terry, go ahead, Councillor James.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Not so much a question, just as a comment. It's nice to see you again, Walter.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, Walter and I have met a few times now, and one of his objectives is to make Langley the first germ-free community in, I think, British Columbia, maybe even Canada, I'm not sure. And lots of opportunities to talk to him, and he does have these measures in place in several businesses in the downtown as well. And I just wanted to ask you, what is the biggest challenge that you're encountering? Because I know when we talked, it's because people don't, it's the buy-in, I guess, essentially, because there's no real tangible and no real proof unless the surfaces themselves are tested. So are you in a position to tell us where you could possibly, like how someone could have a surface tested and then install your product and then have it retested? Is this something that is available? Can you buy a kit, or do you have to get a professional, or how does it work?
You have to get it professionally. UBC doesn't do it, unfortunately. But there are some independent companies that do that. And the costs are generally a little bit higher than what I'd like to see. But you can generally do a swab. A good example of it, they did a swab at Langley Lodge. And they found, they did it on my copper, and the bacteria count there was 20. They did it on the table beside my copper, and it was 300. So 20 is acceptable, 300 is not acceptable.
Thank you. And again, just to wrap it up here, my understanding is that you've also been talking to, or you're about to, or you're going to attempt to talk to the different educational facilities and some of the other care homes and things like that in our community as well?
Yes, I'm talking to schools, mostly independent schools at this point, because you can't tackle the big ones to start with.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your passion and what you're doing, Mr. Stunder. So it's nice to see you again. Thank you for your presentation.
Okay, you're very welcome.
All right, seeing no other questions, thank you very much, Mr. Stunder. I'm sure we'll talk soon.
Good. Thank you.
Take care.
Anytime.
Thank you. Okay, next up we have Michelle Sparrow from the Fraser Valley Real Estate Board. Hello, Ms. Sparrow, you have 5 minutes.
Hi there. My name is Michelle Sparrow, and I'm the Professional Standards Advisor for the Fraser Valley Real Estate Board. It's great to be here today. It's nice to see all of you here. So just wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about a project. So the Fraser Valley Real Estate Board represents just over 4,000 realtors from across 7 municipalities. And we've just celebrated our 100-year anniversary. So what we've done, what the board is doing is we're wanting to acknowledge and celebrate that marker by gifting our seven communities that our realtors represent benches. So these are quite unique. They're illuminated benches, and they're a really neat design in that they can be set to different colors depending on the season or different events. And so what we're hoping to do is have a bench with a placard sort of mentioning the work realtors do within our communities, a marker of the centennial anniversary that we've celebrated, and have a bench, a place in each one of the communities, like I said. So this would be free of cost. We would be covering the cost of the bench as well as the installation. So what would be required would be a power source in the area to be connecting the bench to. And we are really hoping that we can get all 7 communities on board and we can see these within each one of the communities. Langley Township has come on board and will be receiving one, the city of Surrey as well, the city of White Rock, and I'm here today to hopefully have the city of Langley be added to that list. And like I said, we're hoping to kind of work our way through all the different, the 7 municipalities, and that's what we're doing. So there should be a couple pictures that were sent, which you guys hopefully have, to sort of give an example of it lit up, as well as showing an example of it being able to be lit in different colors. And so what I'm hoping here today is to get mayor and council's approval to have staff work with us to pick a suitable location. And then we're hoping in the spring of 2022 that we can do an unveiling and have mayor and council there for a ribbon cutting and yeah, see this project move forward. That's it.
Well, that's great. Thank you very much. Councillor Storterboom, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Ms. Sparrow. It's good to see your smiling face.
Very nice to see you.
You're very kind, and congratulations to the Fraser Valley Real Estate Board for 100 years of professional service in the real estate industry.
Thank you.
I think this is a really fun initiative, and I like the idea. I'm not sure what kind of responsibilities come with that, how long we're expected to maintain it, or what kind of repairs might be required, or where we can put it to be sure that it gets the best use. But in principle, I think it's a great idea, and I like the idea of celebrating the real estate board. I'd like to do more with the real estate board as city council, because real estate is a very big part of what we do, as you know.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I'm excited to be actually taking on some of the government relations part of the work at the Fraser Valley Real Estate Board. So I hope to be doing a lot more work with all of our communities as well. So.
Well, that'll be great. Maybe we'll get a chance to meet in person in the new year or sometime.
That would be fantastic. Absolutely.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Please extend my best wishes to the real estate community at the Fraser Valley Real Estate Board. And yeah, I'll trust that we can put something together with the team moving forward. Thanks again. And thank you,
Councillor. Thank you.
Councillor Wallace, go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, Michelle.
Hi.
Thanks for your presentation. I love the idea. I don't know if you know that we light the Spirit stage with different events, and I think I'm just saying it would fit really well with that.
Absolutely.
Douglas Park. That's just my personal thoughts, but I love the idea and I love the gift. So hoping council loves it as well. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Councillor.
Councillor Albrecht.
Yes, thank you. And good to see you again, Michelle. And thanks for doing the presentation. I think it's a marvelous gift, and I'm happy to support you working with staff to find an appropriate location and make sure that it's a nice contribution to our community, because I appreciate the real estate community. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Councillor Pahal, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I think it's really interesting design. I know we've accepted some gifts in the past, and just to be transparent, I think there was like some maintenance challenges with them. So I just want to make sure that as you're talking with staff, we're making sure that this is something that's maintainable in the long term, because this bench is going to be with us for a while, and there's a cost to that from the municipality. So I think it's a great idea. I just want to make sure that as we're looking towards it, we understand the full life cycle costs of that and the replacement costs of it. Because just like say the rotary clock, that's by City Hall, there's an expectation that these things get renewed over time as well. So it's a really cool thing. I look forward to seeing it. But I'm hoping that as you work with staff, we also make sure we get the full cost of the gifts so we can budget for it appropriately and know what it is to replace in the future. But like I said, really cool. I look forward to seeing more information about it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councillor.
Councillor James.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Hi, Michelle. Nice to see you.
Nice
I've
to
never
see
seen
you.
anything like this. I think it's fascinating, to be honest with you. And I like the idea that the colors can change. So I didn't want to be the only one not to say what a cool initiative. And thank you for considering Langley City and all that. And I also am fully supportive of you working with staff to find appropriate location and things like that, because they are in fact the experts, especially when it comes to power sources.
Absolutely.
So yeah, thank you very much for the initiative and for bringing it forward.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I do that. And I'm just going to ask Ms. Kenny, do we need a formal motion for that? Somebody wants to throw it on the floor.
Have a motion to refer it to staff to investigate and report back.
Yeah. Councillor Wallace, you want to second that?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. There you go, Ms. Sparrow. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it very much. Take care, everyone.
Cheers. Nice to see you. Okay, and our third delegation is Harish Masand. He's got a request for changes to the secondary suite provisions in the zoning bylaws. So welcome, Mr. Masand. You have 5 minutes for your delegation.
Thank you very much. Respected Madam Mayor and honorable members of the council, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to present my case. I am the owner of property 19924 in 48th Avenue in Langley. Me and my wife bought this property 2 years ago with all our life savings for the future of our 2 boys studying in university. Right now we live in Surrey because of their accessibility to BCIT and SFU. We both were very excited to have a property in Langley in present situations, and we were looking forward to have a good future over there. This property was built in 1976, and it has had at least 3 owners before me, as it was confirmed by the owner from whom I bought it. It has a basement suite that was finished more than 10 years ago, as confirmed by the building manager, Mr. Brian Hoskins, during his visit last month. I don't know which owner completed this basement suite, but it has been used as a living space for years now. Even in the property disclosure statement, the last owner didn't disclose that the basement was illegal or was built without the permits. However, the notice from the city that came last month gave us a complete shock and surprise, because the house is in the same condition that I bought it as 2 years ago. The property is not even rented for last 3 months, so I didn't know the possible reasons for this notice. I was looking for the single family to rent this entire house when I received this notice. We have suffered financial losses due to non-rental, and now this notice has caused us a lot of stress and anxiety. This uncertainty and being held responsible for something we did not do is negatively affecting me physically and mentally. My only request to the Madam Mayor and to the council is that we should be helped and guided to bring the property to the accepted codes of city, considering we are law-abiding citizens and trapped in this situation of being victims. We are in the process of removing the kitchen and stove and fridge and cabinets, but we're also requesting the council to review the provisions for secondary suite in zoning bylaws. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. Does council have any questions or comments for Mr. Masson this evening? Counselor Sturdivant and then Counselor Martin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Bassan, for your presentation. I believe we spoke on the phone a couple of times to talk about the situation that you find yourself in, and I did give you some advice to pursue the matter, specifically with regard to legal representation and to identify that, you know, we do have these bylaws in place for a reason. And moving forward, I still think that's good advice. And I would encourage you to do so. But honestly, I think the prospect of changing the bylaw to accommodate your individual situation might be a bit cumbersome and might not be well received. But you do have a very specific situation, and I believe that there is some legal recourse if you pursue it. I would encourage you to do that. Thank you very much, Mr. Bassan, and thank you, Madam Mayor.
Counselor Martin.
Thank you very much. I mean, this is the second sort of complaint we've had about our secondary suites, and they both involve realtors. Something is not happening here, and it's the realtors are not disclosing or the owners are not disclosing. And I don't know what we can do about that, whether we get in touch with the real estate board and just mention this. But what I'd like to ask Mr. Bassan is, what specifically do you want us to change? Is it the that you have to live in the house to rent a basement suite?
Yeah, because currently my situation is such, I can only talk about myself, and I feel that there might be others as well in a similar situation, because we cannot live in that house right now, and it has a basement suite, which had I known, I would have followed the guidelines. That's just me and that's the way we are. As I said, we are the law-abiding citizens. But we bought something that was not disclosed to us. It's already there. Now I've already lost financially so much. It's adding up on my finances. Now I have to revert it back to the code. That's again, I don't know how long is the procedure is, but I will follow the procedure. So that's my request, that if that can be allowed, especially in the houses where people like us who were like targeted, who were just victimized, they were not told the reality, and they were sold the house. Now the whole onus is on me. I am the owner of the house, so I am the owner of everything that's done wrong in that house, which is not correct. So there should be some exemption, some consideration in specific cases like these where people have been falsely sold these property where the disclosure statement was not disclosed properly. So that's my request.
Okay, thank you very much. I certainly understand your situation. I tend to agree with Councillor Sturdivant to change the bylaw to suit your needs, or maybe the needs of one or two others. I don't think that's going to happen. Again, I mean, to me, this falls back on the real estate agent and I guess yourself too, to check when you are buying a home with a basement suite, to check with the city to see exactly what the bylaws are, because as Councillor Sturdivant said, we put these measures in place to protect the homeowners and to protect the renters. So, you know, I can't see us changing the bylaw, and perhaps Councillor Sturdivant did give you some advice as to what recourse you may have. But, you know, I'm sorry for the situation that you're in, but I really can't see the bylaw changing at this point. Thank you.
No, I totally get that. Thank you very much. My only request right now in my situation is that if I may be helped and guided to streamline, to restore to the city code in a faster manner. That's number one, because I don't want to go on to lose, because for November also I've lost rent and it's adding up on me financial debt, which I may not be able to, because both my kids are going to the university. That's number one, my one request. And my second request is, that in a situation like mine, where I feel, and I'm sure you all agree, I'm more like a victim. yes, I learned my lesson, should have done an due diligence, should have gone to the city and checked with them, but from both sides of the real estate agents, oh, go ahead, do it, good. The property disclosure statement says no illegal seed, go ahead. So yes, I have learned my lesson that I should have checked with the city, but as of now, the situation that I am in, specific to my situation, I'm just requesting that I may be helped and guided. That's all I'm requesting. I know changing bylaws overnight just on 1 or 2 complaints is not feasible. It's not doable. I understand.
So in regards to having some guidance to meet the code for your basement suite, I would assume our staff are more than willing to give you any advice that you may need. So I'm sort of speaking out of turn on their behalf. I don't know if one of the staff want to comment on this, on how you can help Mr. Masand. Mr. Johansson, do you have something that you might want to add?
Yes, thank you. Through the mayor to Councillor Martin. I did speak with my staff team today about it, and we are going to follow up with Mr. Masand and help him bring his home up to code.
Great, thank you very much, Carl.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Sturtevant, go ahead again.
Thank you again, Madam Mayor. Not to belabor the point, I do really appreciate Mr. Masand's situation. And I agree with Councillor Martin that our building department is second to none, and they'll be happy to help you with some guidance to make the property in compliance with our bylaws and health and safety codes too. I mean, you know, it's all about public safety after all. But I should advise that, yes, Councillor Martin's correct. Realtors have a fiduciary duty to protect the best interest of their clients. And it's a shame when this sort of thing happens. Part of the problem is that the market has been just so busy. A lot of people are buying properties without doing their due diligence because they're throwing cash offers around and $1 million properties, and they're not able to investigate. And I hold the province responsible for that. I think there should be a cooling off period after an offer is received so that buyer can do their due diligence. I think that there's a lot of people who bought former grow ops this past season because seller didn't fill in a disclosure statement identifying what the property was used for. There's a lot of sellers who sold their properties knowing that they were deficient. And in this case, we have Mr. Masand who is experiencing this. So I actually hold the province responsible for that. And again, I tell you that our building department will do their very best to give you guidance as requested to bring your property up to code. Thank you, Madam Mayor, for the opportunity to speak out a little bit there. So that's a sort of a pet peeve of mine. Thank you again.
Great. Okay, any other comments or questions?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Council. Thank you very much for hearing me out. I'm sorry. I'm frustrated. I'm stressed out. I'm angry. I'm upset, but I have no one to go to and no one to complain to, because I take the ownership of the mistake that I did. But we bought this property 2 years ago when the market was not crazy. I mean, we were going back and forth with the reality for 1 month. For 1 month, the realtors were going back and forth to come to the agreement on the price. So it wasn't that it was bought over that crazy period. But again, both sides of the realtors did not disclose that I should have. It was their duty to protect my interests, that I should have gone to the city and find out. But I just believed the papers they offered me. And yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for your time.
Well, thank you for coming in tonight and telling us your side of the story and sharing. So staff will work with you, and yeah, thank you for coming.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, take care. Okay, up next we have community spotlights. We have Metro 2050 here. Sean Galloway, Director of Regional Planning and Electoral Area Services, and James Stibert, Division Manager of Growth Management and Transportation. Welcome, gentlemen. You have 10 minutes for your presentation.
Great, thank you. And through your worship, thank you for having us today. And before I begin, I'd just like to respectfully acknowledge that Metro Vancouver's residents live, work, and learn on the shared territories of many Indigenous peoples, including the 10 local First Nations. So I'm Sean Galloway, as was mentioned, and before James begins his presentation, just a small introduction. So over the past 2 months or so, culminating in the end of this month, we've been going to each member jurisdiction and TransLink boards and other regional stakeholders to do this presentation in an effort to provide information on Metro 2050 and the work that's been done to date on it. And part of the reason we're here is to emphasize how important this plan is to everything that we do at Metro Vancouver. And how we plan for projected land use and growth over the long term has a massive impact on the communities that we develop. And so choosing to build a compact and complete communities means we can keep our costs low and we continue to protect the value of our industrial capacity, sensitive natural areas, and our food producing lands, amongst other lands within the region. It also improves our resilience over the longer term, as you'll hear in the presentation upcoming. And certainly over COVID-19 and throughout the summer, we've seen impacts relative to the resilience of both our province and the region, and our perspective of city building and region building. And so as we move towards November 26th, which you'll hear about as the date we would like to have comments back on Metro 2050, we want to acknowledge the great work that your staff and staff across the region and all the municipal planning departments and regional agencies have collaborated through this process to the policies that you'll hear about today. So we want to say thank you for your time and your staff's time in getting us to this point. And this is your plan, and we need your assistance in getting this across the finish line. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to James Stiver, Manager of Growth Management, Growth Planning and Transportation, to take us through the presentation.
Great. Yes, thanks, Sean. And thank you, Your Worship and members of council. I have a presentation to share, if that's okay. Can you confirm that you can, everybody sees the presentation?
Yes, thank you.
Terrific. Okay. So what I'm going to do today, as Sean noted, is I'm just going to provide a brief presentation on the update to the regional growth strategy, but also touch on a little bit of the history of growth planning in this region, but more focus on the scope of the update that is out for comment right now, including the growth projections, the main goals, and highlighting what's proposed. So as you're likely aware, there's a long history of regional planning, informally and formally, in this region, dating back to the 1960s, and has generated an established set of principles that define what's important to this region over time. And the growth strategy that we currently have, Metro 2040, and the one that we're working on today, reinforce those principles. So growth strategies in general are a long-range land use policy plan for a regional district. They're defined by the Local Government Act. So there are prescribed elements in a regional growth strategy that must be considered and contemplated by the regional district board and its members. The primary purpose, as the name implies, is to manage projected growth in the region over a specified period of time, minimum period of 20 years. But as with most OCPs, the regional growth strategy focuses on a 30-year planning horizon. And in terms of legal framework, the plan must be accepted by all member jurisdictions before the board can adopt a plan. So in terms of what's happening with the update, Metro 2040 has been a strong growth strategy over the past 10 years. And this isn't an opportunity to reinvent those base principles I mentioned or burn the plan to the ground and start over. This is about building on the successes that we shared over the past 10 years. This is a great opportunity to align with Transport 2050, which is TransLink's regional transportation plan that's being drafted and is out for formal comment right now as well, applying lessons that we've learned through implementation. And there have been some challenges and some inconsistencies with administration of the plan from Metro Vancouver's staff perspective, but also our member staff perspective. So this is a great opportunity to have those conversations, to learn about how we could provide for better and more consistent implementation. And also, this is also a time to reflect on emerging and new critical challenges in this region. Certainly, social equity and climate change and housing affordability is not a new thing. In 2011, these were not given the priority that we need to lend to it today. So they were the foundational pieces on which we turned our mind to the challenges of this region going forward for the next 30 years. So over the past 2 years, we've had an extensive engagement process with member jurisdictions, the public, regional agencies such as TransLink, the health authorities, the public. That entailed a series of themed, what we called policy reviews, which were background documents to look at the challenges and opportunities that would feed into the eventual new directions of the growth strategy. We hosted a number of public dialogue events that we managed to get done before COVID hit us in a big way. So they were in person. And then we pivoted because of the pandemic, as most municipalities did, and finished off our consultation primarily in an online format. And of course, we've had extensive input from the Regional Planning Committee and MBRD board. So thank you, Your Worship, for your involvement in that. Most recently in this year, we've turned to drafting new content based on all the background work. We struck a formal committee called the Intergovernmental Advisory Committee, and your staff at the city was involved in that committee, where we presented draft language and redlined new content that was subsequently presented to the Regional Planning Committee and MBRD board for endorsement, but not adoption, but the directions were given a green light. And that's what helped us pull together the draft document that you'll see today. And of course, now, as Sean mentioned, we are in our comment period, but I'll touch more on that in a moment. So as I noted, the draft of Metro 2050 builds on Metro 2040. It's a product of extensive engagement. It has responded to extensive municipal staff and council and board requests that have come in the early part of this year, and strong input from the Intergovernmental Advisory Committee. The Metro Vancouver board endorsed the draft to distribute it for formal comment starting in July, and that triggered a formal comment period, which will take us to the end of this month, end of November. The plan, as with Metro 2040, includes actions for Metro Vancouver, member municipalities, and TransLink. One of the foundational pieces of the growth strategy is that we are anticipating the region is going to continue to grow. So this isn't about encouraging growth in this region, it's about managing what is projected to come to this region over the next 30 years. Just to reinforce the point, and this is often an interesting point of conversation, the projections are not targets. They are meant to guide infrastructure and other types of investment at the regional and local levels in this region. They're not meant to be build-to numbers or minimums or maximums. The targets have shown us that the trends of the past will likely continue, driven primarily by immigration in this region, to the tune of about 35,000 new residents a year, which translates into 1 million new residents by the year 2050 coming to this region. This also translates into approximately 500,000 new homes and 500,000 new jobs coming to this region over the next 30 years. So the challenge comes with the distribution of those growth pressures. So to arrive at these projections, we have a data team that uses a scenario-based model. And as I noted, immigration is a primary driver in that, but also migration in and out of the region, in and out of the province, natural increase in terms of births and deaths, and plus or minus 15% buffer is built into these projections. As I'm sure you can appreciate, when you get out 30 years, sometimes these projections get a little fuzzy because who knows what the world will be like at that point. So think of it as a high, medium, and low projection when you get further out. And these numbers have been ground truth with each of the member jurisdictions and planning and data staff, and in terms of what's already permitted in your local OCP and in the pipeline. Metro Vancouver is built on 5 goals, similar to Metro 2050, with one principal difference being Goal 4. In Metro 2040, Goal 4 was a complete communities goal. And with this go around of the update to the growth strategy, it's primarily dedicated to the challenge of affordable housing in this region. So again, just to reiterate, it's around these established planning principles around building a compact and complete urban area in our region, supporting the economy, protecting the environment and responding to climate change, affordable housing again, and also providing sustainable transportation choices for people. So in short, what Metro 2050 is proposing is greater clarity on the role of urban centers and frequent transit development areas, with 2 new types that signal a greater emphasis on high growth or stable centers. These are tools for municipalities to choose to use when you're updating your regional context statement. This isn't something that has been imposed on municipalities through this process. There's stronger alignment between the planned locations for growth with a new tool called the Major Transit Growth Corridors. And this is to reinforce the center concept, but also give better direction for municipalities when they're contemplating frequent transit development areas, and to help with different components of the medium density form and medium affordability forms of housing that seems to be lacking in this region. And of course, these corridors are tied to TransLink's major transit network that's coming through their new plan. There's a new target of 15% new and redeveloped housing in urban centers and FTDAs, specifically for affordable rental housing. And this is a regional target. It's not meant to impose this target on any one municipality, where you're fully conscious that every municipality is different and has different capacity for providing affordable housing. This is meant to establish a baseline for the region and determine how we can do better as a region in providing this type of housing in those transit-rich locations. There are new policies that continue to encourage transit-oriented affordable housing, given that lower income owners, particularly renters, depend on transit more so than others, and that the affordable housing in those regions is sorely lacking given high land costs. And there's also policies about protecting existing non-market rental uses from redevelopment pressures in those particular areas. There are stronger protections for our limited and valuable industrial lands in this region. And on the other side of the coin, there's greater flexibility for new mixed use, particularly residential use in employment areas near rapid transit stations, to try and get more at that transit-oriented affordable housing. There's stronger climate action. There's been extensive conversations around the climate impacts that we're already seeing in this region. And if anybody was here this summer, they'll recall the extensive wildfires in this region and the extensive heat alerts that are just a sign of things to come. There's new collective actions being introduced to meet our greenhouse gas emission targets that are already in the growth strategy for a carbon neutral region by 2050. And again, there's this adaptation piece that we haven't spent enough time on in the past talking about. We've been focused solely on mitigation as opposed to adaptation. There's a new target to protect 50% of the land base of the region for nature and achieve a 40% tree canopy cover within the urban containment boundary. So this also speaks to climate change and the impacts of human health on access to nature in our rapidly urbanizing region. And again, these are regional targets. They're not meant for any one municipality to take on the burden. Right now, we're at about 40% protected land for nature, so we're well on our way. But this is also a means to meet the international standard of nature needs have to be a healthy ecosystem and habitat environment. There are new and more explicit integration of equity outcomes in the plan. We had an equity consultant help us audit the policy directions of Metro 2040 and develop new language to ensure that we were not making equity outcomes worse in this region and positively moving the dial on that element as well. And there's a new emphasis on building relationships with First Nations, particularly on their development aspirations on reserve lands and ensuring that the planning on those lands are considered in adjacent municipal development plans and infrastructure investments, and building positive relationships where we can have early conversation with First Nations to determine their aspirations so we can better help them achieve their objectives as well. And just a note at the bottom to reinforce that all regional targets are regional in nature. They're not specific, with a view to each member working within your local context to implement the best you can to meet your aspirations and current market restrictions, and contributing towards the regional target. And they will be monitored on our end from progress towards those objectives. So as I noted, we're in a formal comment period right now. There's a 5-month period that comes to a close on Friday, November 26th. We're asking for comments from member jurisdictions to come by way of council resolution, or to at least be received by council and submitted to Metro Vancouver by that date. There's also an online feedback form open to the public, other agencies and businesses for their input as well. And there's been a number of outreach opportunities already planned and ongoing through this fall period, including a public webinar 2 weeks back. We have partnered with UDI on a public webinar, which was last week. There's been ongoing social media promotions, and there were a number of open houses that were hosted as well. And there was a final meeting of the Intergovernmental Advisory Committee in October as well to go over comments to date. So just my last slide here. We are in this comment period till the end of the year. What is going to happen after that is Metro Vancouver staff will go through all of the comments that we received and propose a response to those in a report that will come forward to the Regional Planning Committee and Metro Vancouver Board early in the new year. We are targeting January, with a request to the board to reaffirm the timeline that has been requested of us to process the update to the growth strategy before the next election. And some of you may be thinking the timeline is a little aggressive, and it has been set back because of COVID, but the Metro Vancouver Board has reaffirmed its request to have this done by the next election. So we will summarize the comments and ask them once again to confirm that the timeline is still something they want us to move forward on. If the answer is yes, then first bylaw reading will likely be at the February meeting of Regional Planning Committee and the board. We have to hold a regional public hearing, which will likely be in March of next year. And then it's out for formal acceptance. And you'll be seeing it again if this process unfolds as planned. You'll be seeing this to pass a resolution of acceptance or otherwise between April and June of next year, with a target of presenting the bylaw for final reading at the Metro Vancouver Board in July. So with that, I thank you again, and Sean and I are certainly happy to answer any questions you might have.
Well, thank you very much for that, gentlemen, and thank you for all your hard work. I know lots of people have been working on this, so thanks to everyone that's been. It's been interesting. I've been learning a lot, which has been absolutely fantastic. So I think we have some questions from council for you. So Councillor Wallace, you're up first.
Thank you to the mayor. Thank you for the presentation. A lot of information to take in. I like the goals with the environment and moving forward and looking at the adaptation piece. My question in regards maybe is, what do you guys define as affordable housing? Because as we look at the cost of housing, and I know that we're trying to mitigate that by the transportation and having housing close to transportation, and making complete communities, but what is your definition of affordable housing?
Sure, I can start us off, Sean, if that's okay with you. Thank you for the question, Councillor, through you, Your Worship. That's a great question, and everybody seems to have a different idea of what affordable housing is, and it's often context specific, as I'm sure you can appreciate. But for the purposes of the regional growth strategy, there is a definition appended to the back. We've created a glossary for this version of the growth strategy to get at some of these terms that could have different interpretations. And it's defined as 120% of the regional median. So our housing experts and the discussions through the housing subcommittee of the Regional Planning Advisory Committee arrived at that definition to help us for the purposes of the growth strategy. That's what's being used, but I should also mention that there is a different approach that's being taken to the 15% affordable housing target, because rental housing has a different definition of affordability than ownership housing. So that definition hasn't been finalized yet. That's something that'll come about through conversations with municipal staff. And I'll finish off by just saying that there are some cases where we have intentionally been vague with the definition so that local municipalities can interpret them in their own context. But to your question about what is affordable housing, that's the definition we're using.
Great, thank you. Councillor Sturdivant. You are on mute.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Stiver, Mr. Galloway, for your presentations. I'm familiar with the 2040 strategy, having contributed to that, and I look forward to seeing the 2050 plan come to fruition. But it's all futuring, isn't it? It's kind of a word that suggests that we're looking into a crystal ball with as much science and statistical information as we can to try to determine where we're going. But it's almost like trying to find a water leak. You never know where it's going to, suddenly open up, and people are going to find a shortcut in traffic, and they're going to find a more affordable way of living or something like that. So it is a challenge, to be sure. I think that moving forward, we have to consider climate very much, as Councillor Wallace was kind of up to point out, immigration and in-migration as contributing factors to our population growth. Here in Metro Vancouver, we live in one of the most beautiful areas of the world. The politics is reasonable, the taxes are moderate, and the climate is pleasant. It's a great, safe place to raise a family in a world of turmoil. This is where people are coming from across Canada, from around the world, and especially with climate warming up, people are going to be moving north away from the equator, I'm sure. I think that your assessment of sustainable, affordable housing will need to be updated before 2050. I can't see, the average house going from 1.1 to 1.6 over that period of time. I expect that within the next 5 years, we'll be seeing houses increase in value that much. I think that housing is not affordable. I think it's a challenge moving forward. And I think we have to rethink how we use the land, because that's the most expensive part of owning real estate, is the land itself. I would suggest a rethink of the agricultural land reserve. It's 50 years ago. We redo the strategy for our regional growth, but we don't take into consideration the fact that the ALR is being abused and misused, and it hasn't been updated in 50 years. Please consider that you can get 3 crops out of a greenhouse up in Karamios when you can only get 1 crop on flat land here in the lower Fraser Valley. And that's if the climate works in your favor. So honestly, I think that there have to be other alternatives for our food sources when it comes to agricultural growth. But it is challenging. I mean, different neighborhoods pop up: Summerfield, South Bonson, Grandview. I didn't see those things coming. I don't think the 2040 plan did. But we're trying to wrestle all of these different variables together I just want to ask you to focus on the fact that it's the land that is so unaffordable. We need more land, and that's going to require public transportation to the further outreaches of the valley and up into the interior so that people can access the amenities that they want using transportation modes that are convenient and easy to access. So no doubt I'll be offering something more of a formal contribution, but I want to thank you, gentlemen, for your presentation, for all of your hard work, and just ask you to keep in mind that there are some out-of-the-box answers that might not be considered at this time. And I think there has to be some flexibility moving forward, because people will find a way to try to survive, whether it's cutting shortcuts in the transportation routes or looking for a more affordable way to live. I think that there's a lot more to be considered here moving forward, especially because the times are so dynamic right now. Thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you, Madam Mayor, for the chance to speak.
Councillor Bahal, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't know if this is to Metro staff, probably our staff. How does the formal comment period work for Langley City Council? Will we be having some sort of other meeting to discuss sort of our collective feedback and formulating that? And maybe that's to Mr. Johansson.
Yes, to the Mayor, to Councillor Bahal. Yeah, in terms of the draft Metro 2050 document, that's something that we could bring to council to provide an opportunity for comment and feedback to Metro Vancouver. And we would be looking to do that as soon as we can in order to make that comment period by the end of this month.
That's really good. And just one more question. So for us, we have industrial land, which we have protected here in our community. And I think I can speak that all of council is very supportive of protecting our industrial lands. One of the things we have going on is we actually have, I guess it's grandfathered now, but there's residential uses within industrial lands here in Langley. And they're in the form of like live, work, and other things like that, where people can have their workshops on the ground level and a place to live on top. And I mean, I live in a sort of area where there's an apartment, like throughout our whole industrial area legacy, there is housing in all our industrial zones, even right by a big factory that makes styrofoam, there is workshops with housing. So I understand and appreciate like why you don't want housing per se in industrial zones, but it's worked well here since 1955, I guess, or whenever we did that, probably actually 1970s to be more honest. So I'm just kind of wondering why there's rationale for incorporating residential and mixed employment, where you focus still on mixed employment, but there seems to be reticence on adding or recognizing and acknowledging that there's been residential uses within industrial lands where it's primarily industrial. Like I'm not talking about trying to sneak one in, but literally there are like, I can just look out my window and there's industrial with either caretaker suites or live work units or all those sorts of things, which I think really add to our industrial area. It creates a sense of community. It also provides affordable housing. It keeps eyes and ears on the streets as well. So I'm wondering Metro's perspective now that you're here on that, adding residential as recognized in our regional industrial land use, and not in a way that, you know, it's a way of not doing industrial. Like you need to have industrial on the site.
James, thank you. Through your worship, I can start, and James may have some things to add. You know, I think the examples you bring up are important, and certainly I think I wouldn't argue that there's an opportunity, that this is a great opportunity to look at that. But obviously, when a lot of these units were completed, it was a very different world. There weren't the standards today, separation standards that we have from industrial uses to residential uses. Not standards that we are imposing, those are just general building code standards. So I think that would be one. Two, the residential pressures are much more immense now. And so we would want to be extremely careful. And that's why even in the employment areas where we're allowing 200 meters from rapid transit stations, and you have to keep the employment designation on the lands. And and it has to be in an urban center or a frequent transit development area. This is to deal with the general notion that you go in and you redesignate the lands to general urban, and we never get those employment lands back because residential is a much more prominent use in terms of the market. And so it becomes difficult to protect the industrial lands over time once you introduce use like residential, and the pressures start to mount in those areas to change the rest of the area over to residential. So that's the struggle we find ourselves in. And so at this juncture, we've opted for stronger industrial protections to protect against those pressures for change.
Yeah, I guess if I could add a follow-up. So we have our industrial uses with residential, and some of those are, I mean, from the 90s, I think, too. So with that designation, and I know the regional district, and again, I agree with what you're trying to do, like absolutely 100%, we need to protect it. Does that mean that all these areas where we've had live work shops and housing on top and other non-conforming industrial uses, when it comes to redevelopment, it has to all go away now? Because we are seeing redevelopment of our industrial areas now. And we actually have a project that is fully industrial at third reading tonight. So that's kind of the tricky thing for us, is it's worked well in our community. We are in a town center. And again, I know where you're trying to do, and I totally support it, because I know people will try to make it a residential wink industrial, right? So I also remember being in a presentation a while ago where the regional district, I think, was even proposing like having strong, you need industrial uses, say at ground level or something like that. But you could have a percentage of residential. So is that totally off the table right now? And does that mean that these kind of residential communities we have on top of industrial places today have to go away now?
So the presentation you're referencing, we're taking a first step in employment areas because the uses there are less heavy industrial oriented, and let's see how that goes in the first. We'll monitor that and see what the impacts are to see, putting these mixed employment uses together with residential, but that's the intent of this 200-meter ring. You'd be allowed to put residential on top of mixed employment uses near rapid transit stations in an urban center or a frequent transit development area. In terms of the legal non-conforming bit, I would garner to say, not to put the question on Mr. Johansson or his staff, but I think he would be more, I don't know your zoning bylaw, and that's where the focus of that question would be on.
Great. So from a regional district perspective, again, we've seen these tricky situations where, let's say you're doing something that might trigger the city and then it's non-conforming. I just want to make sure that we don't end up in a situation where someone wants to renovate like a service bay in one of these places, and all of a sudden it's like, nope, you're non-conforming, and then it goes downhill. Because we've kind of seen that before with some of our zones where we don't want to trigger something. Otherwise, it will trigger a non-conforming use, or if someone sells their property or whatever. So maybe that is for staff. And I don't want to put Mr. Johnson on the spot, but I guess I'll just say broadly, is this something that we as a city are considering as we develop our new zoning bylaw to be consistent with the regional district's updated definition of what industrial is? Because I think that's a big part of 2050.
Yes, to the mayor, to Councillor Pahal, yes, we will be as part of the zoning bylaw update. As a part of that process that we're looking to bring forward to council and hopefully wrap up early next year to be consistent with our new OCP. We would definitely be looking for that consistency. And, with these properties that have existing residential on them, those would be legally non-conforming, if they are now or over time. And it's really until the point where the property owners decide to redevelop, there's that consistency with, the OCP, the regional growth strategy, and all that becomes a factor that process.
And just to follow up, so Mr. Johansson, what percentage of our community is mixed employment and industrial on a ballpark?
I'd have to get back to you on the percentage. And are you talking in terms of land area or floor space?
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is the reason we're talking about this is it is a significant part of our land base. The whole area from 56th Avenue North, basically 200th West is industrial, and we have a whole swath of mixed employment. So this is something that's really important for our community. And that's why I'm a little bit excited about it, because it's not just like off to the side. It's a key part of our community, and the SkyTrain goes right through it. So I'll leave it there.
Yeah, and yeah, I see Mr. Beddoes come onto the call here. He might have some further details there, but I mean, we can get back to you with the specific numbers. But yeah, we have a really defined industrial core and mixed employment areas, as we all know. And in fact, you know, coming out of the OCP, we'll be reviewing, you know, for example, Langley bypass, you know, east of 202 Street to see if there's further opportunities for mixed employment. We see that as a real opportunity in the city.
Okay, Nathan, did you have another follow-up or?
Not unless Mr. Beto had anything to say, but I'm good. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Mr. Beto, did you have anything to add to that?
Madam Mayor, just on the question about nonconformity, I just wanted to clarify that we have 3 properties in the city right now with live-work developments on them, and each one has specific zoning, site-specific zoning to allow that use. So, you know, provided the owner's development plans fit within the existing zoning on that property, there wouldn't be a non-conforming situation created. It would only be if they required rezoning, in which case the zoning would have to be consistent with our current OCP, and of course that links to the regional growth strategy through our regional context statement.
Great, thank you for that, Mr. Beto. Councillor Martin.
Thank you very much. There's been a lot of talk over the years about industrial land and how much consideration, excuse me, was given to industrial land in the 2050 plan. I'd hate to see more amendments come through, like came through on Friday at the board, because basically the land that's available is going to be Langley East. So how much consideration was given to specifying for industrial land?
I can start us off, Sean, through you, Your Worship. The background work on industrial and employment areas for Metro 2050 were driven significantly by the regional industrial land strategy, which is 2 years worth of work that ended in early 2019. So that certainly made it very clear to all regional stakeholders the shortage of industrial land, the contribution that land makes to the regional and national economies, and how significant it is, and some of the strategies for further protecting and expanding that going forward. So there were 34 actions in there that we will continue to work on with our municipal partners over time. But where we could, we drew on those actions to support policy directions in the regional growth strategy. So to get to your question, there was no change of land use proposed with Metro 2050. We committed very early on that we were not adjusting the urban containment boundary. We were not adjusting land uses or urban centers as part of this work. That is work that is typically initiated by member municipalities, and we work together to present something to the board, as you saw last week. Those kind of amendments will continue to come forward based on local aspirations, and we have to deal with each one on its own merits. But the answer to your question is we didn't add any new land, but certainly, you know, that's something if a proposal comes forward, we would be very supportive of talking about that and looking at opportunities for where and how to introduce that, because it's not all land is not created equal. And as you'll see in the plan, we have different elements. We have a new trade-oriented lands overlay that we're hoping we can work with our municipal partners on to identify those areas where we want to specifically preserve larger parcels to support the trade function in this region. So a restriction on subdivision or stratification is involved there. But again, these things are driven by local councils and the interests that you have, and we're happy to work with you going forward on those.
Thank you.
Councilor Albrecht, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. And I want to thank you for your presentation. I don't want to oversimplify, but I see this as a guiding document to help set strategies and goals and objectives, identifying pressures and emerging needs in the region. At the same time, I guess my real question is, this document by no means takes away the autonomy of a local community, correct?
Thank you, through your worship. No, it doesn't take away local autonomy, but your official community plan has to show how it's meeting the goals and strategies of the regional growth strategy by way of your regional context statement.
Yes, correct. So that's kind of what I'm getting at. So I guess what I'm really looking forward to, and it's just a comment from myself, is I'm just looking forward to our professionals on staff providing us with the kind of feedback or the concerns that we may have as a local government in how we fit in the context of the 2050 plan, because this is really comprehensive and really detailed and is really going to help steer us into the kind of region that we want to develop. So I think it's really important for our staff to play a pretty significant role in how that's all going to come together for us and in the future. So thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. It was nice to see you, even though it was on Zoom. We got lots more work to do. So thank you for coming tonight. We appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Take care. Okay, that's good discussion. So coming up, next section is the mayor's report. So the next upcoming meetings. Regular council meeting November 22nd, 2021 at 3 p.m. and that is virtual again. And the regular council meeting after that is December 6th, 2021 at 3 p.m. for virtual. And if any members of the public can get information on how to attend these electronic meetings by going to council meetings webpage on our website at LangleyCity.ca if you want to participate. So next up, we have library happenings with Councillor Martin and then a Metro Vancouver update.
Thank you very much. In getting ready to do this, I have to find it because it somehow deleted it. Sorry about that. Trying to get prepared and then I'm unprepared. Oof. Okay, sorry about that. So slide 2, where would we be without our favorite authors? The Write On Favorite Author Contest celebrates the authors we love and starts a conversation in our communities. The contest runs from November 1st to the 30th. To enter, customers tell us their favorite author along with a brief reason for explaining why they love them. Customers can enter in the library or online. The grand prize is a $150 Chapters gift card with 3 runner-up prizes of $50 Chapter gift cards. The next slide 3, in support of the Write On contest, customers can tune to Fraser Valley Regional Library's podcast, Read Radio, the first week of November for 2 podcasts celebrating staff's favorite authors. Next slide. The celebration of authors continues with a staff curated book list throughout November. And Trivia Masters assemble. You can test your knowledge of the first Avenger with our Captain America trivia event. Participate by yourself or assemble a team with the other heroes in your household and conquer the questions together. And the next slide, are calling on all teens. Want to start journaling but not sure where to begin? You can join us for a discussion on the joys of journaling, potential benefits, as well as tips and tricks. If you already have a journal, bring it along. If you don't, that's okay too. And you can join the library and Metro Vancouver Park staff in exploring the extraordinary life of salmon. You can discover how salmon provide food for the forest and more than 100 animal species, including humans. Learn about the salmon life cycle and its role in temperature rainforests and find out more about the library resources and Fraser Valley Regional Library's playground items that will keep you exploring the great outdoors. This program is for all ages. And are you a cooking enthusiast? Do you love trying new recipes and sharing your cooking experiences, meal ideas, or culinary tips with others? Join us for a cookbook club. Each month, we will explore a culinary theme. At our November session, we will be diving into a discussion of Mexican cuisine, and you can come prepared to share your favorites. And kids and teens, test your creativity. Come up with a handmade chariot attachment that allows your Spiro to carry around quarters and enter our official Spiro Quarter Carrying Challenge. There will be 3 judging categories: straight line, carry the most coins and win; turning a corner, carry the most coins and win; and style, decorate your chariot and see if it's a winner. And just further, I'd just like to add that on October the 18th, Fraser Valley Regional Library achieved a significant milestone. Just before 4 p.m., a customer borrowed the ebook version of Orson Scott's Xenocide, a science fiction classic. What makes this notable is that it was Fraser Valley Regional Library's 1 millionth ebook circulation in 2022. The first year in which we loaned over 1 million books. This means that we have seen 1 ebook checked out every 25 seconds or 2.4 ebook checkouts every minute of every day since the beginning of the year. Not surprisingly, our busiest days for ebook checkouts were May the 24th, Victoria Day, September the 30th, National Truth and Reconciliation Day, April the 25th, a closed Sunday, and February 15th, Family Day, all days in which our libraries were closed. So that's, to me, it was quite astonishing. Every 25 seconds an ebook is checked out. So I thought those that like statistics might enjoy that. And just briefly on Metro Vancouver, I wish I could say the meeting was brief. It was a 7.5-hour meeting on Friday, but they did accept our regional context statement. And the board also approved the 2022 annual budget, which provides funding necessary to build, maintain, and upgrade critical infrastructure that is a strong foundation for the region. The operating budget is $1.17 billion and $1.38 billion in capital expenditures for 2022, and it will address key board priorities. In 2022, residents will contribute an annual average of $595 per household for all regional services. This is a $21 increase over prior years, but $17 less than what was projected. The increase is 3.5% compared to 6.4%, which was previously anticipated for 2022. And that's my report. Thank you very much.
Okay, any questions or comments for Councillor Martin? Councillor Wallace?
Yeah, thank you through the mayor. Just a comment to the Fraser Valley Regional Library. Just the amount of programs that they put out there for families and for all ages. And there's always, every time you give your report, Councillor Martin, there's always something new and exciting. And I'm writing it down, like, you know, the salmon rainforest is such a great topic, especially at this time. So yeah, just wanted to pass those comments on to the Fraser Valley Regional Library and for all the good work that they're doing. Thank you for your report.
Thanks, Rosemary. The staff are incredible there, and they're always coming up with ideas, so we very much appreciate them. Thank you.
Councillor Sturtevant.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Martin, for your report. Always good to hear about the Fraser Valley Library and the good work that they're doing there, helping to keep our residents in reading materials, media, literacy programs. It's wonderful. And you've been a champion there for sure. I'm curious about the Metro Vancouver meeting. I can't remember a Metro Vancouver meeting running 7.5 hours before. That's got to be a new record. Are you privileged to advise why it took so long?
Yeah, I think that was probably a record. One item that we discussed was in regards to an amendment to Surrey, putting buildings up in the 196 and 16th Avenue, and that discussion was 5.5 hours long for the one item. And of course, then the rest of the meeting took place. So
yeah, that's down by Campbell Heights area there, I guess, is it? Yeah, that's a growing area to be sure. Thank you for your update and for sharing that report. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, up next, we have engineering update with Rick Baumhoff, our Director of Engineering, Parks and Environment. Please go ahead, Mr. Baumhoff.
Okay, thank you very much. And I will just share my screen. So this is the update for November, and start off with the project on 200th Street sewer upgrade. It runs from approximately 49th Avenue to the Nicomeco Bridge area to a trunk main there. This sewer upgrade is being done through trenchless technology. So this first shot here you see is a mandrel going inside a smaller diameter pipe, and you can see the pipe on the right picture, it's bursting. And so this is the new pipe coming through. So it pulls this mandrel through, breaks the pipe, and then slides the new one through. So it ends up being less disruptive to the road and to traffic, and it gets done faster and is more cost effective. So we have a couple of videos of just showing the technology. Can you all see that? So this is it showing the mandrel coming through into the smaller pipe, and I'll just fast forward it so that we can just get through this a little quicker. It does take a bit of time. So you can see it just bursting the pipe, and it works its way through, and it just continues on until it reaches to the other end at the opening where they're pulling it through. And that's it for that one. And this one shows the other end. So this is the part where it's pulling the rod, and the rod goes right through the old pipe and pulls the new one through. So this blue device at the bottom is pulling that rod and pulling the whole pipe system through the old pipe. And you'll see that the excavator is pulling the rods as they're coming out, and they undo them from the system and they pull them out from this end. And once the pipe comes through, then they flip the whole works around. So now it'll be facing the other direction, and they'll start from the other direction. And once the pipe comes into the middle, then they'll put a manhole in and tie the pipe systems together. And here's the shot on the right side of the pipe as it slid through into the hole there. And they weld the pipe together as it's going. So they'll stop, weld each piece of pipe together. It's a high density polyethylene pipe. So it's also got a very long life to that pipe. All right, this next shot is just showing the replacement of the sign on the 204th Street overpass. You'll recall a number of years back, these signs were stolen, and it's because it was brass and it has some value. These new signs are made out of lower value product, and so hopefully we'll have a less likelihood of being stolen. But as you can see, it does still give a good appearance to the sign. This is a shot of 208th Street is carrying on the project for widening bike lanes and trail improvements. There will also be new trees planted along the 208th connector. This is the shot on the east side near the culvert area. And this is a picture of the bridge, or the bridge work that they're doing. So they're basically disassembling the walking strip and taking out the railing, widening it out by a meter or two, and then adding the bike and a multi-use facility. And this is a shot of there's a large diameter culvert in about the midway point on the 208th connector. And that culvert needs to be extended, and these corrugated pipe pieces here will be bolted together and extend the pipe out so they can build up the bank. Next series of shots is on the Glover Road project. It continues, and they're putting in the curbs. This is the shot of the median. So it's a narrower median. There'll be trees planted in those in the future. This completion of some of the utility work connections. The city crew completed the actual connections to our water system. This is a shot showing looking north. Is showing the dedicated cycling infrastructure. So it'll be the multi-use pathway. And on the left here is the new curb where the road edge will be. Here's a shot just showing the curb machine putting in the new curb. And that's my report.
Great, thank you, Mr. Baumhoff. Great report, lots of stuff going on as normal. I'm avoiding 208 as much as possible because traffic is usually backed up right onto 48 sometimes. Councillor Bahal and then Councillor Sturtevant.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and to Mr. Baumhoff, through the mayor. Do you have an ETA on when the 208th Street project might be completed?
It is supposed to be this year. It just depends on the weather. So it could be delayed into next year, again, just if the weather dictates. But they are making very good progress.
That's great. So in a worst case scenario, maybe the spring?
Maybe the spring at the latest, very latest, yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Sturtevant, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Baumhoff. Your presentations are always very worthwhile, very much appreciated, and this evening, very entertaining. I've never seen anything quite like that, so I really want to thank you for sharing that. I feel like I know something now, thanks to being educated by you. A couple of things in your presentation, just first with regard to metal theft, and this might be a question for staff, but I thought we had a bylaw advising that, you know, the recyclers had a duty of responsibility to advise when they're taking in these, you know, obvious city plaques and, you know, corporate property. Is that gone by the wayside now? I remember Mr. Cliff Gettins, he ran with that for the longest time, and he seemed to find some success and cooperation from the recyclers. But I'm just wondering, has that dropped off? Do we need to renew that because it's pretty bad? Mr. Chung?
Through the mayor to Councillor Storey, yes, we still have that bylaw where we require the recyclers to register any type of wires or coppers that enter their sites, and has to be registered and submitted to the RCMP. So what we can do is we can follow up the RCMP to ensure that that program is still functioning properly, ensure that the recyclers are doing the responsible thing to record any type of metal theft being deposited to the yard.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chung. Through the mayor, I just want to say that I think it might be time to remind the recyclers of the benefits of living in our culture, our society, our community, and that they might want to get with the program rather than, taking an expensive plaque and turning it into a lump of metal for pennies on the dollar. But I also want to ask about the 208, or not 208, I guess it is the bypass at 208th and Fraser Highway there. We're putting a lot of fill into the floodplain there. It's more than I had thought. And I was kind of curious if we're looking at some kind of a watercourse management program to be sure that, considering how we've had these extreme climate situations, the possibility of very high water coming next spring, and constant vigilance in caring for that floodplain, making sure that we don't put too much fill in it. Is there some concern and any specific strategies around watercourse management for this particular project?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think it appears that maybe some of the pictures that I showed where the culvert is, where it needs to be extended, that area is really there for construction purposes. Once they're done with the extension of the culvert, they'll pull that back. So it's a couple of meters, 2 or 3 meters on either side. Needs to be widened out. So of course, all the permits were taken out that were needed to do that work. So overall, like the volume wise of the floodplain, it would be fairly minor in volume.
Okay, thank you. I'll take your word for it. But you're right, the pictures make it look like it's pretty significant. And if nothing else, at least I'll offer a reminder that we have to be careful that we're not, filling up that floodplain and giving ourselves a problem in the future when the water runoff comes down the valley.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Baumhoff, and thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Wallace, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And to Rudy's last comments, I was going to comment about it. So thank you for bringing that forward, Councillor Storteboom. In walking by, yeah, I was kind of wondering some of the same questions that Councillor Storteboom had asked you, and if wildlife has been affected or will be affected by that project. And just because it's a special ecological system right there, as are the entire floodplain is. So I think you addressed some of that. So just being in, cognizant of that sensitivity, that area. So that was my question. And another, just a point, and I think that your films are wonderful. I think that a lot of times we don't think about what is happening under the ground and how significant that is. And I think sometimes it'd be great for the community at large to be able to see some of what you just showed, especially with the pipe and how that was done. So thank you for showing us that at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? I guess you're good. Thank you, Mr. Baumhoff. Okay, on to bylaws. First up, bylaw 3184. Zoning amendment RZ 06-21 and development permit number 08-21. Third reading of a bylaw to rezone the properties located at 19959 to 19985 56th Avenue, 5643 and 5647 200th Street from RS1 single family residential to L1 light industrial to accommodate a two-story 5,561 meters squared industrial office development. That the bylaw cited as the zoning bylaw 1996, number 2100, amendment number 180, 2021, number 3184, be read a third time. Mover and a seconder, Councillor Pahal, Councillor Stortaboom, discussion, Councillor Pahal, and then Councillor Albrecht.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'll definitely be supporting giving third reading of this. It's one of the first new industrial projects, only one I've seen in my lifetime here in Langley City. It faces 56th Avenue. It puts its best face forward to the street, which is a bit of a change from what we've seen in the past, where these buildings generally turn inward and present a blank wall to our streets. So for those reasons, I support it. And just as staff, I hope that as we see redevelopment within our industrial zones, and it looks like that's becoming popular with the scarcity of industrial lands, that we continue this pattern of having the streets front our major arterials and put their best face forward to the street. So I wanted to call that out. And then also, I know I mentioned it, this will be the third time, the fact that they retain two significant trees is important. And I would hope to see that as we continue to redevelop, that we put every effort to maintain significant trees. So that's my two comments. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Albrecht, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I agree. This is I think, going to be a great addition to our community. Question I had was, are there? I think at the time, staff was going to look into the lighting for the lane. We're going to have increased traffic in that lane and that particular area that's been typically dark, and lanes are narrow. Visibility can sometimes be obscured with fencing and buildings and just the narrowness of them. So if it's possible, it'd be nice to know if we're going to get some improved lighting in the lane area. Thank you.
I will ask if Hirad would be able to answer that question, please.
Good afternoon. Through the mayor, the analysis has not started yet. It is one of the things that the developer's consultant is to provide, but we are still at the early stage of the design.
Great, thank you. I just wanted to flag it to make sure that we have a good, safe environment for everybody. Thank you.
Great, thank you, staff, for that clarification. Councillor Stortaboom.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And yeah, I too will support the zoning amendment, development permit for this particular site. I'm interested in seeing this development take place on that corner. It'll redefine that intersection, in my opinion. But I too have concerns about access and egress to the property. It seems that some of the neighbors advised us that they had concerns about parking and use of the laneway to access that site. So I would suggest that we pay special attention to the access, the egress, and as Councillor Albrecht said, the lighting associated with that particular property, to be sure that it is well serviced without inconveniencing the neighboring community. I know parking is going to be a bit of a concern moving forward. I trust that there's a parking management plan in place during the time of construction. I don't think it's going to be an issue once the property is established, but in the interim, I would suggest that it might be something to review with the developer moving forward. Thank you for your support and all the comments. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Great, thank you. Okay, anyone else? Seeing no further discussion, I'll call the vote. All those in favor, anybody opposed, and that carries. On to the second bylaw, bylaw 3185, official community plan bylaw amendment number 18, OCP 05-21. Third reading of a bylaw to amend City of Langley official community plan bylaw in order to incorporate provisions for higher density, low-rise residential uses at the properties addressed 5370 and 5380 200 Street, 5371 and 5381 200 A Street, 20010 and 20020 Michaud Crescent, and 20031 53B Avenue. Motion for it is that the bylaw cited as the City of Langley Official Community Plan, Bylaw 2005, number 2600, Amendment number 18, 2021, number 3185, be read a third time. Need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Pahal, Councillor Storteboom. Any further discussion? Councillor Pahal and then Councillor Storteboom, please.
Thank you, and I'll be supporting this. It's just a OCP amendment that's consistent with our new OCP, which just passed Metro. Thanks.
Thank you for that clarification. Councillor Storteboom, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I want to thank everybody for all the conversation around plastic grass. It's my understanding that there will be no plastic grass associated with this particular development. And I think that that's something that our advisory design panel and council have made very, very clear. Is that correct? Mrs. Johansson, maybe?
Yes, Mayor, to Councillor Storteboom, I believe this is probably something that's going to be talked about with the next item, but as the applicant outlined, just recalling what was talked about at the public hearing, the synthetic turf in the dog run area, and they also outlined some areas, I guess, along the patios on the ground floor. And I think there were some comments from council members during the public hearing about seeking to discourage that. So I'm just repeating what was said at the public hearing, and there may be some further discussion on that. Just wanted to clarify that, Councillor Storteboom.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Johansson. I appreciate you clarifying that. That was the intention of my question. I can't help but think that there might be some kind of new, I want to say, technology or design or creation that is specifically intended for accommodating dogs and their bodily functions when living in a high density living situation. So it might be something that we can research out and recommend to the development community when they're building residential multifamily buildings here. Thank you again, Mr. Johansson, for your answer, and thank you, Madam Mayor, for the opportunity to speak to the matter.
Okay, any other further questions? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. All right, next bylaw up is bylaw 3186, zoning amendment number 181, RZ07-21, and development permit number DP09-21. Third reading of a bylaw to rezone the properties located at 5370 and 5380 200 Street, 5371 and 5381 200 A Street, 20010 and 20020 Michaud Crescent, and 20031 53B Avenue from RS1 Single Family Residential to CD 78 Comprehensive Development to accommodate a 6-story, 113-unit apartment development. Motion for it is that the bylaw cited as the zoning bylaw 1996, number 2100, amendment number 181, 2021, number 3186 be read a third time. I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Pahal, Councillor Storteboom. Any discussion? Councillor Pahal, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So as far as the rezoning is concerned, and this is third reading of the rezoning, I am supportive of the rezoning because that is consistent, again, with what we want. I do have concerns about the development permit. And I know we're not voting on the development permit tonight, but I do have a motion for later in the meeting that I think addresses a development permit for when that hits council at a later meeting. I have a real concern with the synthetic turf. I think that's something on the ADP they were very strongly opposed to. I'm strongly opposed to it. I know our community is strongly opposed to it. And just like a quick picture, I mean, there was sort of some conversations at the public hearing about grass not being green. This is my apartment building. This is grass. It's a pet-friendly building. So I wasn't entirely convinced of the proponent's argument on that. So at this time, I'm supportive of third reading. I'm having a motion for council to consider later. The development permit at this time, I'm not supportive of. Obviously, we're not voting on that tonight. I hope the proponent updates their plans to get rid of synthetic turf. And I hope that council supports my motion. So that's relayed to the proponent. Otherwise, I won't be voting in favor of the DP, but for tonight, I will be voting in favor of third reading. Because again, the zoning and what they're building as far as the density is something that I'm supportive of. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councilor Albrecht, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to thank Councillor Pahal for bringing that forward. At this point in time, I was seriously considering voting against this development just on the basis of artificial turf. That's what I'm going to call it, plastic grass. It just, to me, it's not something that we really want to get into in the kinds of developments that we want here for our people to live in long term. So I'm looking forward to the resolution or the motion coming forward with the DP. I'm speaking like this because I want a strong message back to the developer to change their plans. This is the city of Langley, and this is what we want. So I think they should be coming forward and doing it. It's not a deal breaker in my mind. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you both for those comments. I know previous council, when we were looking at redoing the parks and stuff, we had this discussion about artificial turfs, and we said no to it. So I don't know why we would change our tune at this point. So thank you for bringing that up. Okay, call the vote. All those in favor, any opposed, and that carries. Okay, on to, Mr. Johansson, did you have a comment before? Sorry, I didn't see your hand.
That's okay, Madam Mayor. I was just waiting until the time to reference this. It's pretty clear from council members' comments related to the synthetic turf that it's not desired as part of the development permit, and we'll make sure we communicate that to the applicant, work with the applicant in that regard.
Thank you, appreciate that. Okay, on to extension of our term task groups. Motion forward is that City Council extend the term of the following task groups to December 31st, 2022. Arts and Culture Task Group, the Crime Prevention Task Group, the Economic Development Task Group, the Environmental Task Group, and the Performing Arts and Cultural Center Task Group. I need a mover and a seconder. I'm going to do Councillor Albrecht and Councillor Wallace. And Councillor Wallace, you're up first to speak, please.
Thank you through the mayor. Just in looking at our terms of reference as we move through our task group, there are a few that I would like to go back and look at our mandates of how these were established. Looking at some of the ones that I chair or vice chair, I've noticed that the Economic Development Task Group has changed some of their mandates, and see that they have gone to co-chairs, and I don't know if that's something that we can do with the rest of our task groups. I would be fine with that. I think that bodes well. I think what I'm worried about on some of the task groups that I sit on in regards to the environmental task group in particular and the arts and cultural task group is that we have a lot of discussions that happen in those task groups. And in our mandate, we have a list of items that were laid out for us to do. And we're not doing some of those. Some of them tie into that. And I'm wondering if maybe we have to go back to, I know it's a directive from council when it comes to our strategic plan, is that's how our mandate is established. and the people that sit on as far as community members. So to have them run more efficiently and to align with our strategic plan, I'm wondering if this is something that we can revisit in seeing that they do align with our strategic plan, so that, you know, also in a line item, it says, you know, one task at a time must be achieved, right? And I think we're doing more than one task, and I'm worried about how much that is being put on staff. So we have wonderful community members that sit on our task groups that do a lot of the work. And I don't want to discourage them in moving forward and coming up with ideas and plans. And I just want it to be something that aligns. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Did anyone from staff want to address that, or?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To Councilor Wallace. Yes, certainly we can have the staff liaison work with the chair and co-chair, if that's what council would like, to review the mandate for each of the task group. For tonight, we're just seeking council to extend the term, but most certainly similar to the economic development task group, each task group chair and co-chair could work with the staff liaison and amend the mandate of the task group according to the overall strategic plan and the mandates of what's aligned with the strategic plan. Thank you.
Councillor Albrecht.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. And yeah, I'm totally supportive of extending these. I think each task group has accomplished some really good things in the last couple of years. And I think they're just starting to get that momentum. They're really starting to come together, all of them, from what I've seen from the reports and the action items that have come through to the council table. So while I agree with Councillor Wallace that I think we as a council should reevaluate how these things are structured, their terms of reference, their mandates, their role or function within our community. Let's get them extended for another year, and then we can work away at getting them a little more perfected or tweaked, or whatever terminology you want to use to effectively serve the community the way they are meant to serve. So thank you very much.
Councillor Sturtevant.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I'm probably just repeating what's gone on before me. I just think that we've done this before with these task groups by extending them. It's fine, but maybe they should be standing committees or something like that, rather than having to go through this process. And the term task group suggests that they are specific to one particular issue, and because they are ongoing, maybe they should just be standing committees instead. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. And thank you to the speakers that went ahead of me.
Thank you. Councillor Pahal.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through the mayor to Councillor Wallace. I feel like it might have been 3 or 4 years ago, we redid the terms of reference for the crime prevention task group. So I just sat down, worked on it, and then I believe I shared it with CAO Chung and Mayor Vandenbroek, and just reviewed it and then put it forward to council. So that seemed to work well for me, and I'd definitely be supportive of any of the chairs wanting to amend the terms and presenting it to council. That's probably the quickest approach, just so it doesn't get kind of bogged down in the bureaucracy of having everyone having to look at it. So if you wanted to make what worked for your group and then presented it to council, I know that's what I did with the crime prevention task group, and it seemed to work well. And then get council's feedback. So if that's helpful at all.
Great, thank you, Councillor Pahal. Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Wallace.
Just to speak to that, so when I'm looking at some of the changes in the economic task group in the terms of reference, there's an alignment between, I know that we need to do whatever we can to attain a performing arts and cultural center, and the line item, I don't have it in front of me, about searching for capital dollars, which is great. I think that has changed, but I think we need to, the reason I'm am questioning is this is our strategic goals and what we want. Do we want a performing arts and culture center? How it's a big capital project to get. And I know all of these, working together, even when we talk about the arts and culture task group, I look at that as a positive for getting a performing arts and culture center, because we have an active arts community, as well as an environmental task group. It's another one that could align with a performing arts and culture center, because we need to be building developments that are sustainable. And that comes with our economic development task group having to be demanding that of our developers. Our developers are not being consistent. They're just coming in, and I look at the development that is happening within Langley City, and it's ramping up. And I'm just thinking, we're not tackling climate change and doing the things that we need to be doing. And this is why we set out, we have a strategic planning session, and we go through items, and we have a blue sky session and things that we want to address. And I think that this needs to be done with all of council. And yes, I love the idea that we as co-chairs or chairs run these committees, or these, task groups. But I just feel like we need to come back and just look at all of that in the bigger sense of our strategic plan. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Councillor Wallace. I agree. That was one thing that I was looking at. I know what Councillor Sturgeon was saying, a task group is just meant for a specific item. And I know you brought that up as well. And I think it's good. We should be looking at making these committees again. And when you look at the economic development and, environment, you're right, they're intertwined. We should be doing both together. We should be doing environment with everything. So those are things I think the majority of here on council support. So that's something that we should be looking at, the strategic planning. My concern with this task group is when I look at the representation of people sitting on these task groups, I don't think we have proper representation of what our community is. I don't see any Indigenous leaders being on here or any sort of programming. A lot of them don't have youth, and a lot of them don't have anybody from the disability community. So those are things, LGBTQ plus community, seniors, all of our task groups and everything should have the same people on them, and they don't. And I don't think we're getting the gist of our community to come to these task groups and give their opinions. So I think this is something that we need to look at to be inclusive and diverse. So that would be my comment for these task groups, is that everybody in our community should be represented. So any further discussion on this? Okay. I honestly don't think they're represented, so I cannot. Yeah, Councillor Wallace, go ahead.
I do believe both on the economic task, the economic task group and the Performing Arts and Culture Center, we do have Kwantlen representation. We have reached out to the Kwantlen First Nation to ask them to be involved in both of those task groups. And I think we have worked really hard to try and do that. I know I don't sit on the economic task group, but I know on the Performing Arts and Culture Center, in our task group meetings, that is very, very important to us, that we have the representation of our Indigenous community. So it's vital. It is something that should be happening. And I know that we have done, I feel good about us having done that. And I feel like we will continue to do that on that task group. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I agree. There is First Nation, but we fall under 4 unceded territories, and to just strictly continue to be doing just Kwantlen, I have issues with. So if we are on the unceded territories of the Kaitsi, Kwantlen, Semi-Amu, and Maskwi First Nations, then we should be asking all of them for a seat at the table, not just Kwantlen, because not only do we cause controversy within ourselves, we cause controversy within them. And in Truth and Reconciliation, we want everybody to go forward as one, and I see that as one. So excluding the other 3 unceded territories, I don't know if going forward, we can do that anymore. If we are honest and truthful about reconciliation, then we should be including everyone. So Kwantlen's a good start. I'm not saying it's not, but they are not the only ones that represent us in this area, in this unceded territory. So Councillor Albrecht, and then Councillor Wallace.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. And I would agree. I don't know if we should be so prescriptive. I think we need to ensure that we've got Indigenous representation at each and every one of these committees. At our Arts and Culture, as well as our Environment Committee, we've both talked about changing our terms of reference to be more inclusive and have more representation on these. And again, like to me, extending these task groups, I think the structure, well, the focus is good. The identification of the working group is right, whether it's a committee, a standing committee, and the representation on these, I think is something that we should be continuing to work and grow and better represent our community. And if we just stop it here now, then we lose all momentum that we've gained. I think it's one of these things we should be extending in order to grow, build, and nurture, and continue on with a lot of the good work that we've accomplished so far. I would hate to lose representation on any of these committees because we're putting in a holding pattern until we sort our own things out. So that's just my thoughts. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Councillor Wallace, did you have?
Yeah, I did. Thank you, Mayor Bell. I do agree with you totally in regards to reaching out to all First Nations that are represented. We have an Indigenous community that's made up of even more than those 4 nations. We look at the Lower Fraser Valley Aboriginal Society. I feel that's what we want to do. I don't think we're wanting to single out Kwantlen First Nation. And I think, you know, when we look at our school liaison committee meeting that we had most recently, that was a topic that came up, and that was about reaching out to the ISL table that is a representation of the Lower Fraser Valley Aboriginal Society and the 4 nations that you spoke about. So I think that we are trying to do that the best we can. And in moving forward, thank you. I hope we can have representation on all of our task groups.
Yep, thank you. That's why I said, I don't think just Kwantlen is a bad thing. I think we're at a starting point, but we need to open up more. Councillor James and then Councillor Bahal.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just wanted to point out, and I don't want to jump ahead because it is the next agenda item, but one of the reasons that the Economic Development Task Group changed their terms of reference is because it now says, oh, I had it and then I lost it. Hang on one sec. A member from the First Nation within the unceded territories that Langley City represents and resides on. That is a reason why, one of the reasons why we changed the terms of reference to be inclusive to all our unceded territories that we represent. So I just wanted to point that out, but I don't want to jump ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor James. I've actually got that highlighted, and that's why I'm bringing this up, because I don't think it should be just one representative from whatever territory. I think it should be all 4 equally represented as far as I'm concerned. So thank you for bringing that up. Councillor Bahal.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And this has been a really great conversation. And I agree, we need to put the invite out to everybody and folks that are marginalized. But I should also say that Indigenous people and people that are marginalized and all that, but we need to put the invite out, but we shouldn't necessarily expect that everybody responds. So it's our duty to put the invite out. It's our duty as people in power to educate ourselves about these issues and come prepared. And I just want to make certain that we don't stop the good work because we don't have representation that we'd like to see. Speaking as someone who's from a marginalized community myself, like you can't expect, you know, oh, we need LGBTQ representation on every committee. Sometimes LGBTQ people just kind of want to get on with their day and they don't want to always be like educating people on the way to think. So I think we need to put the invite out there, but I also just want to make sure we set that expectation that it's really up to us, those people in power to do the heavy lifting and for us to educate ourselves. And, if we really truly believe in something, maybe we start looking at paying folks for their time, because we shouldn't rely on free labor when it comes to marginalized people. So I just wanted to throw that out there, because I know that's one of the things that we can fall into. And that's just from my kind of personal experience as well at work, and even work on council here. So I just wanted to kind of call that out, that yes, send out the invite, but let's not stop the good work if people aren't there. And if we're missing that point of view, as we put our money where our mouth is and get people, pay them to educate us to do the good work. So
I think
that's what
people
I
should be invited to the table. I agree 100%, Nathan. Absolutely. But I have been hearing from, like Langley Possibilities and stuff like that, that they are not being included in, prime example was ADP, and then we got them on board, right? So we should be all inclusive. We were supposed to be the leaders here. So as far as I'm concerned, we should be inviting everyone to the table, whether they come or not, that's their choice. But we should be taking on the lead here. And so I would like to put forward a motion that we have staff investigate this further, and with the possibility of updating our terms of reference at a future time, if everybody's okay with that.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Kelly.
I think we have a motion on the floor, do we not?
Yep, and that's an amendment.
An amendment.
Can we add an amendment to that?
No,
Or
I
do
would
you want me
say
to do it as another motion?
Yeah, we're just talking about extending the terms of these task groups at this point.
Okay, well, that means I'm gonna have to vote against this then, if I can't do an amendment to the motion to have staff further investigate. So Councillor Wallace, go ahead.
Yeah, can I just ask a question of Ms. Kenny in regards to, I wanted to extend them. I'm fine with extending them. I think my question was, are we able to go back as a council and revisit our terms of reference? With if we put this through for another year. So after that's voted on, are we able to go and sit and, it was just a friendly ask of that's what we should be doing as a council, is looking at our strategic plan. And I think Mayor Vanderbroek, I think that inclusion piece is in our strategic plan. And just for some clarity, thank you.
Oh, Ms. Kenny, you're on mute.
Well, I did it again. So so through the chair to Councillor Wallace, definitely. So this is really just getting the extension of the having these groups. And then of course we want to look at are they doing the job that you're wanting them to do? And of course, looking at the terms of reference to make sure it aligns with your current strategic plan would be a very good idea.
So just to follow up through the mayor, so you're saying we vote this through and then make that a friendly amendment? Is that what you're saying on the motion?
Right now, we're dealing with just extending the terms, and I would believe it'd be up to each task group to decide if they need to amend their terms of reference, or if council does want to give direction overall to say that all the task groups must do that work. That is certainly at the discretion of council to do that.
That's fair. Thank you.
Sorry, double click there. Councillor Bahal and then Councillor Martin, please.
Yeah, so I'm in favor of extending. I'm also in favor of reviewing the terms. So if the mayor had a motion that we review this for inclusion, I'd 100% support that as well.
Councillor Martin, thanks. Councillor Bahal.
Thank you. Yeah, I support the extensions. I think that they should go until next year, and in the meantime, working up to committees or task groups for next year, it can be discussed and they can be changed for 2023. It's basically the last year of our term, and I think they could be prepared by the task groups and see exactly what they want. So we should just right now, I think, approve the extensions and then move on to maybe further updates in the future.
Keep double clicking. Okay, any further comments? So Ms. Kenny, if we vote, I just want confirmation on this. So if we vote in favor with this, we are not going to change any of the membership that's included currently in our task groups, correct?
I'll defer that to the city manager.
Through the mayor, yes, if we council extend the term, it means the mandate and the memberships remains the same for each task group. Yeah, but having said that, based on the discussion tonight, council at your direction can certainly direct staff to have each task group chair to work with the staff liaison to review the terms of reference, including the mandate and the membership. And if there are any amendments, then bring it forward for council consideration in a future meeting. Thank you.
All right. So I guess I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that carries. Okay, moving on to terms of reference amendment economic development task group. That City Council approved the amended terms of reference for the economic development task group. Need a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor James, Councillor Sturdivant, any discussion on that? Councillor James and then Councillor Wallace.
Yes, thank you. So Councillor Albrecht and I co-chair this task group. And I just wanted to give a brief background as to why we are asking for this realignment of the terms of reference. Because when this first started, when we were all first elected, we had a different mandate and then COVID happened. We completely shape-shifted to accommodate that and did what we needed to do at the time. So now that things are, I'm not going to say back to normal, but now that things have settled down a bit as far as an economy and understanding, development going forward, economic development going forward, we sat down together and worked up this terms of reference, which any chair and co-chair can do, or co-chairs or chairs or what have you can do together, and then take it to staff. And then exactly what happened here, you can update the terms of reference. So I just wanted to keep this brief, but the reason we did this and want council support or asking for council support is because a few things have happened. We got the announcement that SkyTrain is coming, for starters, which is a biggie. KPU is working on their 2050 master plan, which is also big. I'm not going to reiterate what's on the terms of reference. I'm sure you've all read it, but a couple of extremely significant, our new OCP is huge too. So some very significant changes have happened in our economic development culture. And in addition, we also wanted to add, be inclusive and add the Indigenous component, including all unceded territories. And also we thought it was valuable if we brought in someone from the Architectural Institute of British Columbia as well. And to Councillor Wallace's point earlier, one of the big things that we discussed was the opportunity to further have an outreach to look at possible ways to finance the capital costs of a performing arts center. So we talked about this at length and worked through it and then approached staff, and now it's on the agenda. So we're asking for consideration for approval, please, so that we can resume getting on with the business of getting on. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Councillor Wallace, go ahead.
Thank you to the mayor, to Councillor James. Thank you for giving us that report. Is there anywhere in there that we can put the environmental impacts when it comes to economic development in there? I don't know if that's something that can be in that task group. I mean, I love the inclusion piece and all of that, but when we're looking at climate change and development and so on, I think we need to have that environmental lens in there somewhere as we look for future capital projects. And yeah, so I think it's a big part of our, people don't put that together, right? The environment and, economics, but it is, because we're looking at mitigation, we're looking at adaptation, we're looking at Kwantlen Polytechnic University's, what is going to be their strategic plan when it comes to moving forward with the environment. So I think that should be embedded in there somewhere. So I just putting that out there. And then I wanted to talk, I don't know, I think we jumped too far ahead. I'm not sure if we did, I don't know where I can, when we were talking about the other terms of reference, did we have to make a motion for each task group to do what the Councillor James and Councillor Albrecht did in what they did in changing the terms of reference a bit and then going through to staff? So I'm just needing some guidelines, and I know that's two different things, and I apologize.
Staff, go ahead.
Through the mayor to Councillor Wallace, I think it would be appropriate for council to pass a motion to direct staff to review all the terms of reference for each of the task group with between the chair and co-chair of each task group and the staff liaison.
So is there a way that we could go back so that I could make that motion, the motion you just said, in regards to each task group looking at their mandate and looking at the inclusion piece and in moving forward? Is that, I don't know, maybe I go to Ms. Kidd.
Kenny, go ahead for clarification, please. Thank you.
Through the chair to Councillor Wallace, definitely a motion can be made after council has dealt with this motion, certainly.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Albrecht.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. And just to build a little bit on what Councillor Wallace was saying, part of this was looking at new models for that development of our community, trying to bring in that expertise and the introduction of someone in the architectural field. Our vision was that would help in terms of sustainability, building styles, those types of things. Now, while it doesn't say it specifically in the mandate, I think we can certainly go back and talk about that and maybe reintroduce. As far as we're just trying to find some, let's say, some benefit of using the experts that we have on a panel like this to try to find some funding models to potentially make the dream of the Arts and Cultural Center a reality. And I think this was something that we seem to be, I wouldn't say spinning, but we didn't seem to be getting much traction in terms of interest level in actually facilitating such a building. So we just kind of thought that it might be a nice piece to add into the economic development portfolio to try to develop that interest and get some better traction on that business model. I was going to say I'd be more than happy after we pass this to move on and make that motion for staff to work with council, our various groups, chairs, co-chairs, in developing a more inclusive terms of reference for all task groups, committees, and working groups. So I'll just leave it at that for now.
Thank you. Councillor Wallace, go ahead.
I was going to make that motion after this, Councillor Albrecht, but go ahead.
I'll do that after.
So I think it needs to be embedded. I think the sustainability, whether it's, you can see, I think you need to see it. I think developers need to see that sustainability piece in there. If we can build a performing arts center that is the top of, an environmentally friendly capital project that combines the arts and the science in tackling climate change and enhancing our arts community and that inclusivity for all, that equity piece, I think that would be wonderful. So I would love to see somewhere in there that is, so if I can make an amendment somewhere or just a friendly amendment that is put in there somewhere in moving forward. Thank you.
I think we can work on that with the terms of reference if I'm not Get staff clarification on that to include climate change.
Through the mayor to Council Wallace, I think what we can do is, I know, sustainability is one of the strategic goals of council, and, we're working on a sustainability framework, which includes economic, environment, and financial, to do it related to everything that we do as a city. So I think it's embedded that, when we move forward with the economic development task group, as well as, the economic development task group, we can include that when we start reviewing the sustainability goals that we have moving forward.
Okay, does that answer your question, Councillor Wallace?
Yes, I guess it does.
Okay. I just like some clarification from staff. So I'm seeing here under the mandate, the last one, it says develop strategies in partnership with government agencies, community groups, and entrepreneurs to secure capital funding. So I thought we got out of real estate. What was that whole thing about being out of development? And is this lobbying? Is this considered lobbying for an iconic destination arts and cultural facility? And I would say this is what, is this not what the Performing Arts and Cultural Center Task Group is supposed to be doing? And another question I would have is, I remember when Councillor Martin first in the last term brought this forward, one of the things was to focus on the industrial area where the SkyTrain was coming, and nothing has been done in that region. And here we are 6 years later. I understand we have COVID, but can I get staff clarification for that, if we're still working on that or not?
Sorry, Madam Mayor, you were asking about the Performing Arts and Cultural Center and asking about fundings.
Yeah, so I'd like just some clarification of why two task groups are going to be focusing on the Arts and Cultural Center when we have a whole task group centered for that. And my understanding, when this task group was first formed, 6 years ago, Councillor Martin brought it up when we were on the other previous term. We were going to address the industrial area that had been neglected for a very long time, where the SkyTrain is coming in. So, and I would also ask if we are going to get volunteers to go out and secure capital funding for us. Does that make them lobbyists? And do we need a real estate development?
I think as a city, we need everybody to be on board to secure fundings to allow us to build the Performing Arts and Cultural Center. With the Performing Arts and Cultural Task Force, all along, our goal was to ask the arts community to organize themselves, create a society, and develop a fundraising campaign to help us fundraise for the construction of the Performing Arts and Cultural Center. And that's no dissimilar to what happened to the Langley Community Music School. So that's one end. And with the development communities, we're looking at different funding models. Could we incorporate a mix of residential commercial as part of the Performing Arts and Cultural Center to perhaps offset some of the capital costs to build the Performing Arts and Cultural Center? So we're not closing any avenues. We're open to all the options to allow us to facilitate that. And that's part of what all communities do in terms of trying to secure fundings. So I don't think we're lobbying. We're going to be, in terms of lobbying, we are going to be lobbying, and we have been lobbying the federal governments and provincial governments for funding through grants. So I think those are legitimate options, avenue to secure funding, because at this point, we don't have the funding necessary ourselves to build it. So we're looking at all options.
Great, thank you for that clarification. That's why I'm asking, to make sure what we're doing is okay to be doing. So that was a clarification. Thank you, I appreciate it. Councillor Albrecht.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. And I guess I was just going to add that the change is like Francis was saying, is just to help explore different models. The actual Arts and Cultural Task Force will focus on the arts and cultural. I can't even remember the center name anymore. The Arts and Culture Center. The actual workings, the function, and how that looks. We're just looking at trying to assemble partnerships to try to, help facilitate a space. And then how that space is created and developed and used is something that the Arts and Cultural Center would be, or task group would be looking at. So I think that's kind of the essence of it. It's nothing any more complicated than that.
No, I know, it just seems like it's overlapping, and if two task groups are going to do the same thing, then maybe one should be doing something else. That's what I'm getting at here. There's nothing against this task group. There's nothing against that. I'm just saying we should be doing our resources for what we need them to and expand them if we need them to. That's what I'm saying here. Councillor Wallace, go ahead.
Thank you. And through the mayor, thank you for asking the question. I think it's important. I think we've had a really great discussion in regards to what our task groups, those two. I did wonder about that last line as well, but it makes sense with trying to attain the capital and being able to stay focused on when it comes to fruition. I'm going to be very positive here. When it comes to fruition, that we will be able to run it, and that's what we need to be working on as a performing arts and cultural task group, is how, when we get this center, how will we be able to maintain the center? So that made perfect sense. So I'm glad that we had that explanation. So thank you, Mr. Chung.
Thanks. Councillor James, did you take your hand up? Did you want to comment?
Yeah,
Or your hand up.
Basically, Councillor Wallace just confirmed what I was saying. We just finished saying in the last conversation that the task groups have to work together. This is not about lobbying. This is literally exploring different areas and using the different task group to the best of their abilities and making sure that their sustainability component is included in it. And it does not come down to lobbying. It literally comes down to finding different avenues of expertise to make the city's dreams come to fruition. So there's nothing complicated or untoward about anything. It is literally trying to do the very best that each task group can within this community. Thank you.
I never said there was anything untoward. It was a question about whether volunteers can lobby or not. That was my question. Staff answered that. That's great. And I'm glad to hear that people aren't going to be stepping on each other's toes, doing the same thing in each of their task groups. So it was a question of clarification, which I'm sure some members of the public are asking, is why are two task groups doing the same thing? So that's all it was. Okay, we're going to call the vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? And Councillor Wallace, did you want to bring up your motion?
Thank you. In moving forward to your piece of inclusion, Mayor Vanderbroek, in moving forward that our task groups work together in looking at our terms of reference and seeing that the inclusion piece, looking at the inclusion piece is looked at in moving forward. And the mandate.
Okay, who wants to second that? I'll second it if nobody else. Councillor Pahal, Councillor Albrecht. Okay, any further discussion on that? I think we pretty much got it figured out. Staff is going to review. Ms. Kenny, is that good?
I had heard about the need for having alignment with the city's current strategic plans. So I wondered if that was to be part and parcel of what's directed.
The inclusion piece and aligning with the strategic plan in moving forward in the terms of reference.
So here's what I had sort of written when I was hearing the discussion, that staff liaisons and chairs and vice chairs and co-chairs of the city's task groups review their terms of reference and membership to ensure more inclusive membership and alignment with the city's current strategic plan. Is
perfect.
that representative of what?
Okay, call the vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that carries. Good stuff. Okay, on to new and unfinished business. Motions and notices of motions. First up is our CMP contract policing municipal cost increases. Brought forward by me, Mayor Val Vandenbroek, whereas the recent collective agreement between the RCMP and National Police Federation includes significant retroactive pay going back to 2017, as well as pay increases going forward. And whereas our municipality and others that depend on RCMP contract policing are facing significant unbudgeted costs that may force us to make different choices at a time when our primary focus needs to be on economic recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. And whereas municipalities were not consulted at any stage of the negotiations process, despite the outcome of these negotiations having a direct and significant impact on municipal operations, and whereas RCMP costs will disproportionately impact rural communities, and whereas municipalities are eager to work more closely with other orders of government and the RCMP on contract policing issues to ensure the financial sustainability of contract policing and to maintain the service levels necessary for community safety. Therefore, be it resolved that Langley City joins the Federation of Canadian Municipalities in calling on the federal government to absorb all retroactive costs associated with the implementation of the new RCMP labor relations regime. And be it further resolved that the federal government should commit to ensuring municipalities are properly consulted prior to implementation of measures that impact local fiscal sustainability and ability to maintain effective levels of police services in communities. And be it further resolved that this resolution be forwarded to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities and to the Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness. And I need a seconder on that. Councillor Fahal and Councillor Martin, you're up first.
Yes, thank you very much. Can I assume that this motion came from the FCM?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, and are all municipalities going to be putting this motion forward? Do you know?
Not sure. Anybody who chooses to do so can.
Well, I mean, I think obviously there's strength in numbers, so hopefully the other municipalities will pick on this. So did it come through? I mean, it came through the FCM. Was it by way of letter or how did it come through? And did it go to all municipalities?
It came through the newsletter.
The newsletter. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Pahal, did you have your hand up to speak as well? Okay, you were seconding. I just want to make sure that I wasn't missing you. Councillor Sturdivant, go ahead.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for this resolution. It must feel a little bit awkward to have to, challenge the RCMP in this way, but it is of vital concern to us, especially during these financial times. My compliments to the author, all these whereases and therefores. This looks like it was very, very well drafted. And I confess, in our last meeting, I kind of missed one of the motions because I missed the whereases and the therefores. But yeah, I support this resolution, and I can't help but wonder: is this motion or a notice of motion?
Formal motion.
It's a motion. Okay, so we forego the notice of motion. Okay. I'm sorry, I have trouble figuring that out. I thought it was notice of motion, then motion, but now we're just going straight to motion. I can support it. I'm just saying.
Ms. Kenny, can you please provide Councillor Sturdivant with the process, please?
Yes, just for clarification. So a notice of motion would be when there wasn't time to actually get previous notice provided for the motion. So in this case, there was enough time to include this motion in the agenda package. And so council got to see it before this meeting. So that's why it's a motion. Whereas a notice of motion is where there hasn't been time to get it into the agenda package, or it just came up right before the meeting. So that's when you would do a notice of motion, and then it can be put into the agenda package.
I see. Okay. Thank you very much for that clarification. I thought that the process was notice of motion, give us time to think about it, and then the motion. But yeah, I could see what you're saying. Thank you very much for that clarification. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yep, Councillor James, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Yeah, hats off to the individual at FCM who actually drafted this. It's very well written. And thank you for bringing it forward, Mayor Vandenbroek. And I will be fully supporting it because I agree it's vitally important. Thank you.
I'm having problems with this mute unmute tonight. Sorry, folks. Okay, any other comments? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor, and that carries. Okay, on to the next motion, Year of the Garden motion for 2022, brought forward by Mayor Vandenbroek. Motion reads, whereas the Year of the Garden 2022 celebrates the centennial of Canada's horticultural sector, whereas gardens and gardening contribute to the quality of life of our municipality and create safe and healthy places where people can come together. Whereas gardens and gardening have helped us face the challenges of the COVID pandemic. Whereas the Year of the Garden will highlight and celebrate the important contributions of our local gardening organizations and horticultural professionals and businesses. Whereas Communities in Bloom, in collaboration with the Canadian Garden Council, invites all municipalities to celebrate the Year of the Garden. Therefore, it be resolved that the City of Langley promote 2022 as the Year of the Garden in celebration of the contribution of gardens and gardening to the development of our country, our municipality, and the lives of our citizens in terms of health, quality of life, and environmental challenges. And that this resolution be referred to the Environmental Task Group to consider developing educational flyers promoting the environmental benefits that gardens provide to our quality of life in the city, similar to educational flyers created by the Crime Prevention Task Group for distribution in 2022. Seconded by Councillor Wallace, and go ahead for Councillor Wallace.
Thank you for bringing this forward. I guess the thing would be like questions that are asked is the cost implications to the task group. I think it does align with what the Environmental Task Group does do. We have the Langley Environmental Partnership does a lot of work in regards to this area, and to the part of the motion that COVID has definitely. I think we can all attest to this, everybody here, that gardening has been something that has gotten us through COVID, and or either gardening or enjoying gardening. And I think we can possibly make this work, but I think I would just need to know how much of a cost would this be and who would be driving it. I know it's referred back to the task group and we'll be looking at our terms of reference and moving forward, but it does align with what we're doing as far as the community gardens and some other garden initiatives that we want to move forward on. Thank you.
Maybe I can get staff clarification on that, please.
Through Mayor Vandenbroek to Councilor Wallace, if this motion gets passed and get referred to the Environmental Task Group, the task group will then investigate and review what it entails, how much it costs, and then a recommendation will be brought forward from the Environmental Task Group to Council for consideration and approval of the cost. And that cost may be coming from either the operating costs of the Engineering, Parks and Environment Department, or from the enterprise funds, or community amenity charges. So those are the options that could be considered, plus maybe other budget, but that's the process that needs to be taking place. Thank you.
I see a head nodding, so I'm assuming you're good with that answer.
Yeah, I'm good with that answer because it's through investigation. So if it's put to our task group, it's something that we have to investigate so further, and the cost implications for sure. So yes, I'm fine with that answer. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Councillor Wallace. Councillor Martin, go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, that was going to be one of my main questions in regards to cost. So hearing what Mr. Chung said, it will fit, if it fits within the current budget or the budget for 2022.
Through the mayor to Councilor Martin, yes, that's correct.
Okay, and again, can I assume that Communities in Bloom went through the FCM to put this motion forward?
Yes, it was brought forward by Communities in Bloom and the Canadian Garden Council.
I'm sorry, the what?
The Canadian Garden Council, which is stated in the motion.
Okay, and again, was that through the newsletter?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know if I get the FCM newsletter, but anyway, thank you very much.
Yep. Councillor Sturdivant.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And yeah, again, another beautifully crafted resolution, but I can't help but wonder, there's a word in that, therefore, the City of Langley promote 2022 as the year of the garden in celebration of the contribution of gardens and gardening. I can't help but wonder if we shouldn't have our environmental task group look at this before we start promoting it, and that the resolution should probably say that the City of Langley consider 2022 as the year of the garden celebration. Would you consider a friendly amendment, Madam Mayor?
We could, but it's already getting referred back to the environmental task force. So I think they could take a look at that as well. And considering they are on the committee, Councillor Wallace, what would your?
I don't think there's a problem with that friendly amendment. We're still going to look at it. I think Councillor Sturdivant, if I'm hearing you correctly, it is that we're trying to, when we state that we are to make it the year of the garden, that we're actually going to do that. By having a friendly amendment makes it like it is going back to us, but we're going to look at that as well. Am I correct in hearing that?
Yes, through the mayor. Thank you, Councillor Wallace. I think you're correct in what I'm trying to say, in that let's wait for the environmental task group to have a look at this before we decide to embrace it. The way that the resolution is drafted, it suggests that we'll begin promoting it now, and that just seems like we're putting the cart before the horse, you know? So if I can get a seconder to make that friendly amendment to change that one word from promote to consider. Gail?
Yep.
Thank you.
Does anybody have a problem with that friendly amendment? I don't think any of us do. Councillor Albrecht? No? Okay. Friendly amendment done. Any other further discussion on this? Okay, call the vote. All those in favor? And that carries.
Thank
All
you.
right, next up, Canwell Federation of Canadian Municipalities grant. This is another one brought forward by Mayor Vandenbroek. Whereas Canadian Women in Local Government or in Local Leadership, Canwell has developed a 3-year 2021 to 2024 project implemented by FCM in collaboration with key national partners and funded by the federal government through Women and Gender Equality Canada WAGE. Whereas women face systematic barriers when running for municipal office, and once elected, this grant application will provide tools for women wanting to participate in government and offer support once elected. This includes addressing gender-based violence, GBV, and harassment, systematic bias, and racism, all of which has been identified as significant obstacles to women's participation. Whereas funds from the Department of Women and Gender Equality WAGE through the Canadian Women in Local Leadership Canwell project would be aimed at strengthening the capacity of communities to support women, particularly those who are unrepresented, Indigenous, Black, racialized, LGBTQ2S+, youth, and others who run for, assume, and or remain in leadership positions in local government. Therefore, it be resolved that the City of Langley support the application of a grant to FCM. Need a seconder on that, please. Councillor Pahal. And discussion. Councillor Pahal, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a great motion. How does this grant process work? So obviously we're supporting the application of a grant. How will that be used? I'm wondering, just in the context of the city.
So just for clarification, there's 4 questions to answer, which I could apply for the grant. I just have to get support from council. Actually, I didn't even have to bring it through as a motion. I could have just gotten support from letter of support from staff or whatever the case may be. So what happens is, I know through Metro Vancouver, we've looked at having a women's mayor's council. That happened before COVID. Unfortunately, that didn't happen at UBCM. So what happens is you apply for the grant and then you work in partnership with other municipalities, other foundations like Metro Vancouver, KPU, the school district. I've also spoken to them. They basically, so if you get the funding, you apply to have nights where you go out and talk, you become mentors, those sort of things. There's a whole list of activities through CanWill. So basically the project is done through them, and then you apply for the grant. If you receive it, then you just contact them and tell them what you want to do and who you want to do it with, and then it's distributed. It's a great initiative to get underrepresented people running for politics.
Thank you. So this is available for folks who are, if I just follow up to the mayor, folks who are in politics, people who aren't in politics, and it's open for any person who identifies as a woman to apply for.
Yeah, it's through CanWill. Yeah, all the information is there. Okay, Councillor, I'm not sure who was next. Give me a second.
Me?
Councillor Stortaboom, and I'm just checking the list. Thank you. Please have some patience. Councillor Stortaboom and then Councillor Martin, you were next on my list after that.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor. Appreciate the resolution. The intent of it, it's a little intimidating for me because I'm not included in the list, but I guess that's just the way of the world these days. I can't help but be curious. Is this grant actually funding election campaigns? Because I can tell you, I ran 5 times. I spent tens of thousands of my own money. And I'm kind of wondering, are we resolving to give people money for their election campaigns here?
First off, I'd like to say, I'm sorry you're not represented in this, but this is the whole point of doing this, is to have support for women in politics. It is not to fund a campaign, is to provide support.
Okay, so it's not about money, it's just about support.
That is correct.
Okay, yeah, and don't be sorry, I've had a good life. It's just kind of, you know, obvious.
I'm not sorry at all, Councillor.
You said sorry.
I find those comments very sexist, and I don't have a problem saying that.
Yeah, okay, it's just
So,
after a life of service.
Councillor Martin, go ahead.
Thank you. So the FCM is applying for a grant through CanWill, is that the idea?
Yes, through CanWill and Wage.
Okay.
Which is the federal government.
Okay. So I appreciate what this motion or the intent of the motion. As a woman who's been in politics for a long time, I think, and our council has 4 women as opposed to 3 men, which is maybe unusual, but I'm not sure that people vote for me or for any other female on council because they're a woman. I would like to think that they're voting for the female candidate because they feel that they are the best candidate, no matter who else is running. So, I mean, there's been talk for years and years and years about, you know, women in politics. And, you know, I kind of have to stand back and think, gee whiz, you know, I don't feel that I've ever been bullied. I don't feel that I've ever not had an opportunity to run. So as I say, I appreciate the intent of this, but, you know, and it's funny, the last election at, I think it was one of our community meetings, a lady came up to me and introduced herself and said to me, I want you to know I'm not voting for you just because you're a woman. I'm voting for you because I think you're a good candidate. And, you know, that should be the bias of all voters. Don't vote for me because I'm a woman. Vote for me because I think you're the best candidate. And that goes to all the women that are in politics. So, you know, I guess I can reluctantly support this application, but I find it, I don't know. I just.
Great. Thank you for your comments, Councillor Martin. Councillor Wallace, go ahead.
I'm fine with the intent of this motion, and I hope we can just move forward in it. I think the intent of this motion, yeah, there have been women in many walks of life that have been harassed, that have stayed behind closed doors because it is very intimidating to go out into the world. And yeah, they stay locked up, and they have so much to teach us in their vulnerability and the things that they have gone through. And I don't think I don't want to make it a sexist thing or whatever. I just think this is a wonderful opportunity to engage women in politics and to teach our young girls that they have the potential and the power to move through things. And I will be supporting this motion, and I hope the rest of council will, and that we can move forward. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Councillor James and then Councillor Albrecht.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a point of clarification. So I just want to confirm that there's a grant available to any female politician who wants to present themselves as a mentor to other women who are interested in pursuing politics. My question is, I don't want to get too deep into it, but if you're applying, if you could apply for this grant without talking to your council, and you effectively would be using the grant funding to mentor other women, why do you need council approval in the first place? Like, what am I missing here? Because
no, what it is you partner with other organizations. So they want to see your municipality supporting candidates to come forward with other organizations. So let's say a poli-sci class at KPU, going to a grade 12 presentation at HD Stafford. It's not about providing money. It's not about necessarily mentoring. It's part mentoring. What it is they have resources that are available to use for anybody. So Terry, if you wanted, James, if you wanted to hop on board and say, I want to provide this opportunity to my kids' grade or my grandkids' grade 2 class or something like that. Okay. Then you would contact them and say, hey, we applied for this grant. Could we do this under this umbrella? So it's just making it available. We could partner with White Rock. We could partner with the township and say to the township, hey, do you guys want to get together with the school district and go and teach women or LGBTQ community, the racially underrepresented, to say these, because we know systematic racism is fully alive in all our organizations. And this is a start to addressing that systematic racism that, you know, because you're a woman, it doesn't matter. Because you're gay, it doesn't matter. Well, it does. And it changes people's perceptions, whether you like it or not. And that's what systematic racism is. And this is one way to start addressing it. So does that answer?
Yeah, it does.
I hope that answers your question.
It does.
It's not, this isn't about me. I'm going to get the grant and this is what I'm going to do. It's, we apply for the grant.
Right.
I went through the motion as a council so that you don't have to do it that way. You can do it that way. Some municipalities have chosen not to do it that way. Okay. I did. I wanted everybody to know that, you know, this is one way that we can help address systematic racism for the next term.
Excellent. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay. Councillor Albrecht, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for bringing this forward. I think this is good. I know I've had the pleasure of working with some very strong, knowledgeable women, and I've appreciated them every moment of the day. I also want to reinforce that I want my daughter, I want my granddaughters, I want anyone in my family to have as many opportunities to become the type of people they want to be, wherever they want to be, whenever they want to be. So I'll be supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Albrecht. Councillor Sturdivant, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. So I'm looking at this and I'm thinking it's all about inclusion, but I'm not included, so I'm not supporting this. Thank you.
Councillor Paul.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to support this, and I'm encouraged that this is a program that will be able to reach out as a municipality to all people that are interested in getting involved in politics that have been marginalized, and a special focus on women who do face different barriers than people who identify as men to get into government, right? So I fully support this, and I look forward to seeing how our municipality can get engaged with folks that have been traditionally marginalized and face barriers to getting in politics. And this is really exciting stuff. And I'm really glad that this FCM program is something that I'm hoping we can be part of. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Paul. And yeah, and that's the intention. And I think one of the things we could do, I haven't had a chance to speak to Councillor Wallace about this, but this is one of the things that we could do with the youth committee. You know, provide maybe an opportunity to do a presentation to them as well. So I think it's going to greatly benefit not only our community, but others. So thank you. Okay, I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor and opposed? Councillor Sturdivant and Councillor Martin, was that an opposing or? Sorry, your hand went up, but I wasn't sure if you were.
No, my hand did not go up.
Okay, thank you. I think you were just, you were doing this, but I wasn't sure if it was a vote or not. So Councillor Sturdivant opposed. Okay, on to correspondence, paid sick leave for workers, City of Victoria.
Sorry, Madam
Oh,
Mayor.
I'm sorry. Did I not? No, your motion comes up next.
Oh,
Is that what
okay.
you were gonna?
Okay, cool. As long as you
Yeah,
didn't
it's
forget.
after this. I'm gonna do correspondence first and then yours after. I've not forgotten. It's on my next page. Okay, receive for information. Everybody good with that? Okay, done. Okay, new business. Councillor Bahal, please bring forward your motion then, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the motion is that staff work to eliminate or significantly minimize the use of synthetic turf surfaces in all in progress and future development projects.
Seconded by Councillor Wallace. And did you want to speak to it as well?
Yeah, so this just solidifies what we as a council talked about earlier today and at the last meeting. And I think just our general feel of our community is that we're looking for natural surfaces, we're looking for reducing the heat island effect, and we're looking for landscaping materials that are consistent with our UOCP, which places a strong emphasis on climate change mitigation.
Are there any environmentally friendly, like turf grass? Can staff answer that? I'm just curious. Do we know if there's any out there that are?
It's all made out of rubber and plastic. So it's petroleum based, but maybe staff can speak.
I'm just curious. That's yeah.
Rick, you wanna?
I'm not familiar with, I'm certainly not an expert in that area for sure. So we'd have to look into it if there is some environmentally friendly product.
Okay. Yeah, no, I'm just curious. That's all. I'd be interested to know. Councillor Albrecht, did you?
Yeah,
Do you know the answer?
No, I don't know the answer, but I believe that question was asked of the developer back at I think it was second reading, and they couldn't give an answer to it themselves. So at least that's what I recall. I may be wrong.
Okay, Councillor Sturdivant, go ahead. Thank you for that, Councillor Albrecht.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Albrecht, for reminding us that the developer had this communicated to them and that through his people, they advised that they would consider looking at options, but it was their idea to go with the plastic grass. I'm thinking there's got to be another way that's more ecologically friendly, like e-gravel or something. It doesn't have to be synthetic, but there's got to be some options, especially with regard to, I mean, it's for pets, right? So for drainage and, odor control, that sort of thing. I'm sure that there's some kind of innovation, but it may not be grass or look like grass. It may be something different, like bark mulch or something. I don't know. Anyway, there is an answer out there, I'm sure of it. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Okay, I see there's a comment. Councillor Wallace, go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to thank Councillor Pahal for bringing this forward, and I think it's a good way to move forward. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll call the vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Okay. All right, so motion to hold a closed meeting, that the council meeting immediately following this meeting be closed to the public, as the subject matter being considered relates to items which comply with the following closed meeting criteria specified in section 90 of the community charter. 1A, personal information about an identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent of the municipality or another position appointed by the municipality. 1C, labor relations or other employee relations. 1G, litigation or potential litigation affecting the municipality. 1K, negotiations and related discussions respecting the proposed provision of a municipal service that are at their preliminary stages, and that in the view of the council could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality if they were held in public. I need a mover and a second, please. Councillor James, Councillor Stortaboom, all those in favor, and that carries. All right, so before we adjourn the meeting,